Welcome to the Marion City Council Workshop, Wednesday, November 8th, 2023. If you'd please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will now head to roll call. Please show everybody present with Councilmember Fuller attended virtually. Review of the minutes from the October 4th, 2023 combined Marion City Council meeting. Do we have any questions, comments, or concerns from council regarding that?
No.
Nope.
Hearing none, I am proceeding forward to the proclamation Municipal Government Works Month. So I'm going to go ahead and read off the proclamation that we have here. City of Taneytown, Maryland proclamation declaring the celebration of Municipal Government Works Month. Whereas the City of Taneytown was established in 1754, and whereas the City of Taneytown is one of 157 municipalities incorporated in the state of Maryland, and whereas the Marion City Council recognize and celebrate that municipal government represents the most responsive level of government, allowing citizens to have direct access to their elected officials, and whereas, in an effort to educate citizens about municipal government and the importance of their participation, the City of Taneytown is proud to promote municipal government awareness, and whereas municipalities have enhanced the quality of life for their respective residents, maintaining natural and historic sites and structures, and helping to make Maryland a great place to live, work, play, and explore. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Mayor and City Council of the City of Taneytown, Maryland hereby joins the Maryland Municipal League in declaring November to be Municipal Government Works Month in Taneytown. Got a lot of talking to do here, so that's the first one down. Next, we have certificate of recognition for Major David Stem from the Carroll County Sheriff's Department. I'm going to go ahead and read over it, then I'll ask you to come up and go from there. Certificate of recognition is proudly presented to Major David Stem in sincere appreciation for your compassionate service to the residents of our community and your unwavering commitment to those in need through your, oh my gosh. I apologize. Rachel made a mistake here. Oh my gosh, I apologize. I have to reread this. Okay, there it is. In sincere appreciation of your exemplary work and dedicated collaboration with the Taneytown Police Department, your expertise has been instrumental in modernizing our policies and procedures, securing grants for body-worn cameras, and enhancing our management of our evidence and property rooms. Your commitment to fostering a cooperative spirit has reestablished vital lines of communication, has set a precedent for future partnerships, and we are optimistic about the bright future that awaits us as we continue to work hand-in-hand with allied agencies around us. The initiative marks the beginning of our strengthened bond with surrounding colleagues, and for this, we extend our deepest gratitude for your time and dedication to these efforts. We look forward to a future of collaboration between our departments. Bring that up here. Councilmember Cheney, if you join me as the police liaison. Oh, sorry, I can grab something here.
Okay.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, and I appreciate what you've done here at the Taneytown Police Department. Next up, we have certificate of recognition for Brian Safehaven. I'm going to read off the certificate, then I'm going to ask you to come up and join us here. So, this certificate is proudly presented to the Brian Safehaven in sincere appreciation for your compassionate service to the residents of our community and your unwavering commitment to those in need through your food pantry and assistance services. Your dedication to helping a veteran in a time of great need has not only changed a life, but has helped also strengthen the fabric of our community. The City of Taneytown recognizes that it is through the efforts of organizations like yours that we are able to come together and ensure that no one is left without support. Thank you for your vital contributions to the city and its surrounding areas. Your work truly embodies the spirit of unity and generosity that is the cornerstone of our community. Thank you for your continued commitment and dedication. And I wanted to touch on one aspect. It touches on here about a veteran at a time of need, and I will say, I was reached out to by a resident of Taneytown, that somebody who really needed some help. And one of the things I try to do is find organizations that can help, because the city can't provide all the services that people need here. We can't always help everybody, but we can find people who can help. And Brian Safe Haven really helped this guy. He was in an extreme hardship, and they definitely helped him out there. So I do greatly appreciate what you did for him. And I just noticed I have one more proclamation to read off, which is the Small Business Saturday proclamation. City of Taneytown proclamation, whereas the government of Taneytown, Maryland celebrates our local small businesses and contributions that they make to the local economy and community. And whereas according to the U.S. Small Business Administration, there are 33.2 million small businesses in the United States. Small businesses represent 99.7% of firms with paid employees. Small businesses are responsible for 62.7% of net new jobs created since 1995. And small businesses employ 46.4% of the employees in the private sector in the United States. And whereas 68 cents of every dollar spent at a small business in the United States stays in the local community, and every dollar spent in small businesses create an additional 48 cents in local business activity as a result of employees and local businesses purchasing local goods and services. And whereas 72% of consumers reported that Small Business Saturday made them want to shop and dine at small independently owned retailers and restaurants all year long. And whereas Taneytown, Maryland supports our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our communities. And whereas advocacy groups, as well as public and private organizations across the country, have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Therefore, I, Christopher G. Miller, Mayor of Taneytown, do hereby proclaim November 25th, 2023 as Small Business Saturday, and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday, and to shop small throughout the year. And that is the proclamation for Small Business Saturday. Did you guys want to take a picture with the proclamation? I'm not sure if you wanted for.
No.
No, okay, just making sure.
Yeah.
I think we're good on that one. Oh, thank you.
You might want your phone back.
Yeah, I forgot. Okay. Now that all the talking is done, I do want to say again, thank you, Major Stem. I do appreciate the work you did here. And thank you, Lillian, Brian Safin. You guys do an awesome job here. You guys have really given back to the community, and we do appreciate it.
Thank you both.
Okay. Next up, we have the reception of delegation CDM Smith, update on dewatering project.
Excuse me, I'm joined by Brian Meyer with Conawago Enterprises. Oh, and Kevin, I didn't even see you there, Kevin, sorry.
I'm in the back.
You want to sit here?
No, you're good. You're talking.
And share my screen for the room. Thank you.
Okay. We've talked over the last couple of years as I've been here to give updates on the sewer compliance efforts and primarily focused on I&I reduction. We've touched a bit on the dewatering project. That's, improvements at the wastewater treatment plant to build a new building and for new equipment to replace aged infrastructure for sludge dewatering. The piece of equipment out there dates back to the 70s and is long overdue for replacement. This project has been loosely tied to the compliance efforts because it allows the staff to focus and the operations to focus more on the compliance issues and less on babysitting older equipment. So that's how we've been kind of bringing it into those compliance-related discussions. The project was designed in 2021, that timeframe. It was bid in 2021 and was awarded to Conowago in May of 2021. There have been delays associated with a number of items. Stormwater management approval from the county being number one. There was also some floodplain easement issues. There were a number of administrative holdups with the county through the approval process. And I'm happy to say, through a long process, that we're at a position now to start construction very shortly. Everything's in place. I credit Conowago for kind of hanging in there with us and working with Kevin, myself, Jim, and also I'll credit the operations staff at the plant for their patience in continuing to work with that aged infrastructure. But I'm happy to report that we're ready to go. Obviously, the delay, especially through the massive inflationary period we had over the last couple of years, has a cost associated with it. So what Jim shared on the screen there is the cost breakdown portion of the change order that has been negotiated between the city, CDM Smith, and Conowago to reflect those additional costs to the project. So due to the size of the change order, it does require council action. So we're here tonight to answer any questions you might have regarding the change order. And I guess we'll be looking on Monday night for your approval for staff to authorize the change order so that Conowago can then start construction shortly. Anything to add, Jim or Kevin?
Do we have copies of this?
No, we'll add it to the packet after tonight. So we really wanted presentation of it to go along with the explanation of why we were seeing these additional costs. And as is kind of laid out here, this is breaking it down based on labor and equipment rates and things of that nature. And we'll talk a little bit later about some of the other particular line items, but essentially, had we waited to bid the project until all the plans were approved, these are essentially the costs of doing the project today. If we had gone out to bid currently, this is what we could expect to pay, at least using Conowago as our contractor. And Conowago, for those who were not on council at the time the bid was awarded, was the definitely the most responsive bidder, and I believe the low bidder as well by a significant margin.
Yeah, and I guess I'll add, Jim, you kind of reminded me of a few items, a few more details just to put this in context. Yeah, Conowago was the contractor for the original plant construction in 1999, and also the upgrade to meet ENR level treatment standards in 2015, yeah. And really what you see there on your screen are costs that are kind of in two groupings. The first are those escalation costs that I mentioned, whether they be labor, equipment, material, or subcontractor costs. And then there is the last two items in that first grouping relate to the technical specific changes that were required as part of the stormwater management changes as we worked through with the county to get their approval on stormwater management. And then the second grouping of additional costs are more related to costs incurred related to, as in this period of these 2 years, as they've received equipment and worked to keep the project moving in this delay period.
We will add this to your packet so you have opportunity to look it over in more detail between now and Monday. And we can talk a little bit more later in the evening about it as well. But if there are any questions for either Conowago or CDM Smith about the project or anything like that, now's,
Yeah, I have a question. Why were there $17,000 in insurance costs?
From the time the contract's open, we have to carry insurance on the project. So we've been carrying insurance since notice to proceed back in June of '21.
It was April. Or, I'm sorry, April's when we opened bids, yeah. I'll also add, that's somewhat related to that. You'll notice the material cost increase is relative to equipment and materials is quite a bit less. On a percentage basis, it's around 4%. And one of the reasons for that being a lower percentage than labor or equipment is because much of the equipment has been, I'm sorry, much of the material has been delivered. So, when we talk about insurance, there are materials.
So you were carrying the insurance on delivered material?
Correct.
Seems high to me.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns for them while they're here? Hearing none, thank you guys. We'll talk more about it tonight and Monday, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Dan, you can take the screen down. Or my screen down.
Next up, we have council member statements regarding conflicts of interest on agenda items. Does any council member want to make a statement, or is everybody good?
Or is that?
Hearing none, proceeding forward to public comment pertaining to non-agenda items. This is open to comment regarding anything that is not on the current agenda. Seeing nobody approaching, we're moving to the resolution, ordinances, and agreements. First up, we have ordinance 09-2023 backyard chickens. I know this was a hot topic for planning and zoning, so does anybody want to start us off with some discussion or questions, comments, or concerns regarding it?
Well, I will certainly, I can certainly lead off with the questions that came from the Planning Commission. There were a number of questions, and I'm hoping I can hold this far enough away because I forgot my glasses. There were concerns about lot sizes and setbacks. There's no minimum lot size included in any of this. So I guess the assumption is as long as you have enough space for the setbacks, you can have the chickens. One of the real concerns that was brought forward is that there is nothing in the ordinance about the chickens not being allowed to free range. Someone could say that their run is the backyard. I don't think we want free range chickens to be part of this. There's also a question about fence heights, and if somebody has some of the commercially available chicken coops are higher than our maximum allowable fence heights. So what do we do with that? Are existing flocks going to have to be, go through this process also? If you have an existing flock of chickens, are you going to be required to go back and get the proper certificates and get a permit approved? There are minimum size dimensions for the number of chickens, but there's no maximum dimension. The question of whether that should be, again, like I said, somebody could say that their run is the backyard, and then essentially they have free-range chickens without saying they have free-range chickens. So, um, so that was a concern. And then there was a concern about the wording for the 20-foot offset from the dwelling should be from any dwelling and not just from the dwelling on the property. So if you have a neighbor whose house sits right up against a property line, like we do in a lot of lots here in the downtown area, then the coop is only 20, at the 10-foot setback, property line setback, then it's only maybe 10 or 11 feet away from the building. So that's an issue. And just, there's just the general concern about neighbors, but I frankly think that that's a concern no matter whether we have this ordinance or not. And in fact, it's part of the reasons for actually having the ordinance is so that, we can have a legal means of keeping a handle on this.
And just to check, Jim, this is revised for the comments from Planning Commission, correct?
No, this is just on for introduction tonight. So process-wise, if it's voted to be introduced Monday night, it will go back to the Planning Commission formally for comments. Since it hasn't been introduced yet, it was just more informational to get some feedback from them to share. Those things can certainly be, if council wishes, can be incorporated, into it. If there's consensus tonight to make some changes, we can make them and have it back before Monday for you. If we're moving forward with it. But otherwise, the Planning Commission gets a chance to make comments, and then, of course, there will be a public hearing at next month's workshop for the public to make comments as well.
I think the issue with the free range that the planning commission brought up is critical. You've got to address that. You also have to address what happens to existing flocks. In other words, if they're not grandfathered, then, and people have to apply for having chickens, then that could cause some issues too with already established flocks. The main contention I have had from the very beginning, and this goes back years, is who's going to police this? This is the critical thing. We can set up all these rules and regulations that we want to, establish all these perimeters and guidelines we want to, but if the rules are ignored or if they're violated, who's going to follow up on that? And that's the biggest concern that I have on. I don't really care whether people have chicken flocks in the backyard, but if we're going to establish a perimeters for which they can operate, then we also need to define in the ordinance how they're going to be monitored and how they're going to be enforced. And that's my comments.
I mean, the answer, my answer to that would be that, in the same way that it would be done now, which is, and with any zoning issue, frankly, is that we do in zoning enforcement by, is complaint driven. So we don't go out and check people's chicken coops when they put them up, but if somebody complains about somebody's chicken coop, we then would go to check to make sure that they had the proper permits and it's in the proper place and it's the right size. But we're not going to go out measuring every coop that comes in. And I'm going to hope that there aren't going to be that many, but, the idea that we're not gonna be out there with a ruler checking everybody's backyard, unless we get a complaint, which is how we operate now.
And for those things that are permitted, there's a, a quick inspection that's done. It depends upon the project. If it's a project that requires a county building permit, the county building inspector is the one who goes out in the field and makes sure it's constructed properly and that it's, the size it's supposed to be and so on. Things like decks, larger outbuildings, that kind of thing. Smaller items like fences or sheds less than 150 square feet, our zoning administrator checks on. But again, it's not, it's not a perfect world. So we may not always know where the property pin is in the corner. So we don't have a landmark to measure from. We're not surveyors. So we go out and we take a look and we might, pull a measuring tape between the shed and the fence and say, okay, it's 11 feet to the fence, so it's good because it's supposed to be 10 feet from the property line. So, we're not surveyors. We don't know 100% that it's exactly where it's supposed to be, but we give it our, our best shot when we get out there in the field.
Well,
But, and historically that has worked. But certainly every now and then we run into a situation where somebody, complains and you go out and measure and, the neighbors uncovered a pin in the corner of the lot and they say, my neighbor's shed is only 9.5 feet and they said it was gonna be 10 or whatever it might be. And then we have an issue. And, generally with any zoning enforcement, when there's a violation, the, code enforcement officer, zoning administrator sends out a notice, and the vast majority of people take care of it. But the number that don't does seem to be growing.
well, it just seems to me without addressing how this is going to be monitored, we're saying to folks, do what you want to do unless somebody complains about it. And that's the way it is now.
Well, that's not quite the case. When somebody does pull a permit, there is an inspection. We go out, we make sure that the shed is 10 by 12 and not 20 by 18. That it's, in the right rear corner of the yard and it's at least 5 feet from the property line, to the best of our ability. So we do that now, and we'll do that with the chicken coops.
Well,
The issue,
that's
the issue that I see is what happens 3 years later when there's a smell or when there's more than 6 chickens or, that sort of thing. And that's when it gets,
Or
that's when it becomes
the neighbor
complaint
sells
driven.
his house and the next person comes in and says, I don't want to be looking at chickens in that guy's backyard. And he calls up the city and says, hey, are we allowed to have chickens? And the city says, no. And he says, well, this guy over here, he's got chickens.
Right.
And so you go out and you tell him you can't have his chickens, and then they say, well, that zoning guy over there told me that I could have 6 chickens.
So so when someone applies, there will be an initial inspection to make sure that what they put in the backyard is what they said they were going to, that it matches what their application said. Once that's done, it'll be up to, any enforcement after that. Yes, that would be complaint driven. So once we've determined the coop is where it's supposed to be, the run is, all the setbacks are met and they've built the improvements the way the plan said, we're done. They've given us their Department of Agriculture registration. They've taken their chicken keeper's course. They've given us the plan. They've put the coop in place like it said on the plan. It gets inspected and then we're done. And we never have to talk to them again unless somebody calls and complains about it. Just like with your shed. You build a shed, you put it in the right spot, we come out, we check it out. We don't have to see you again unless you let your shed get run down.
I guess where I get short-circuited, we have chicken flocks in town now that haven't gone through any kind of process whatsoever.
Yes.
So a guy says, okay, they've got a chicken ordinance in Taneytown, now we can buy chickens. Let's get our 6 chickens and start pumping out some eggs. And they come in and get the application and they see all this stuff they gotta do. and they say, whoa, this is a lot of work. I ain't got time to take a chicken breeding course. Let's just put the chickens in and see what happens. Is there any difference than what they're doing now? I mean, I think it would be intimidating for the typical homeowner to have to go through the process we're outlining in this ordinance to establish a flock of 6 chickens. Is the juice worth the squeeze, I guess is what I'm asking. And if it's not, if it's too complicated, if it's too rigid, what's to stop them from just saying, well, my neighbor's had chickens for 3 years. Why don't I just get some chickens and see if they come after me? They never came after him. That, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and that's really the crux of a lot of zoning issues that we have is, you know, a lot of folks want to abide by the rules and they go through the process. But, and I'm sure there are some that look at the process and say, I don't want to do all that. And, you know, and from my experience as being the zoning administrator, I was always surprised how many people wanted to build a bigger shed, but when they learned that they would have to get a county building permit, they decided to do a smaller shed so they wouldn't have to deal with that. Well, I'm sure there are people who are finishing basements that, you know, we never see that aren't getting the right county permits. I'm sure it happens. And, you know, from time to time, we'll get a call, you know, hey, my neighbor's doing this, my neighbor's doing that. And, you know, we'll work with the county, you know, they may do an investigation on it. But, you know, that's zoning in general is, you know, and some of it is, you know, that if it's made very complicated to comply with, it tends to drive people underground, you know, for some of those projects.
Wow.
And that's, you know, so again, really, it's up to you guys if, you know, you want to move forward with it or not, but that's kind of the challenge with any of our zoning ordinances is that, you know, the people that want to comply, you know, are gonna look at it, they're gonna do their best to follow the rules, we'll inspect it, you know, and we'll be
mean,
good. But
that's
there's
life,
always
right?
gonna be people that
That-
look at the rules and like, well, you know, I can do most of that without getting a permit,
Right.
you know?
I mean, I
and-
feel like that's like that's life. Like, there's people who are gonna speed,
Right.
whether you know what I mean? Like, if that's how we're gonna go about it, like, there's people who are gonna do a lot of things, whether
And
it's
I appreciate
against the
that
rules or not.
that example because I was thinking about making it myself. Just because somebody might be able to drive 60 miles an hour between here and Westminster and
Right.
not get a ticket.
Right, doesn't mean that it's
Doesn't
okay.
mean, and it doesn't mean that speed limits aren't enforced.
Right,
It means you happen to get away with it,
right,
but it doesn't mean that nobody is enforcing speed limits.
exactly.
So, you know, that I guess I take issue a little bit when people say we don't enforce our
Right, I
codes.
agree.
You know, we don't catch everything, and some things are complaint driven.
Yep,
But, you know, Daryl logged in, 18 new code cases this week. I mean, we're enforcing our codes. I think he cleared 17. I don't have his stats right in front of
Yeah,
me,
I
but,
think that's right. I remember reading it earlier.
you know, but so, I mean, we are doing code enforcement. I'm sure we're not getting every single thing that's out there.
but
But-
they're also humans, so.
But, yeah,
I-
and also, I don't think generally that, you know, we don't want, you know, if you wanted rigid enforcement, we could hire a full-time code enforcement officer and have them out there patrolling and, you know, finding as many little things as they could. I mean, it's all about what, you know, what we want to accomplish and how we want to be perceived, I guess, also. So we try to hit that balance, you know, of being out there, making sure people know that we're out there, you know, looking around and responding to complaints. But I guess we've also not wanted to be draconian in, you know, nailing people for any little thing that, you know, you possibly can. Usually it's trying to get them to comply more than penalize them.
And I think this also has them realize that there's more to chickens than just buying chickens and putting them in your
Put 'em in your
backyard.
yard, yeah.
Because I think that's the real, goal is to make people think, you know, it isn't the same. You can't just buy a chicken, put it in your backyard, and that's, you know, there you go, it's done. You know, now you got a chicken, life's happy. The idea is you have to take care of them, and if you're not upkeeping it, your neighbors are gonna smell, it, and that's gonna drive a complaint itself. And that's what, when I see this, that's what I think the reality of it is just to get, hopefully people, they're like, yeah, I can have chickens, but I do have to realize that there's more to it than just buying a chicken. I need a coop, I need a run, I need everything that goes with the chicken rather than just buying a chicken and putting it in our backyard. But it's the same thing. I mean, we already have it to where you're not supposed to have chickens. So the idea of who's going to enforce this or who's going to enforce that, it's not a sound argument when there's already people with chickens when we say they can't have chickens. But in my opinion, the idea is now that you're allowed to have chickens, I think you'd have to meet the minimum requirements here for the chickens because you already can't have chickens. We are now allowing them, so you'd have to come into compliance with what we're.
Right, if there are flocks that exist in the city, right, this gives them a path to come into compliance. Otherwise, if we get a complaint, the letter goes out saying you have to get rid of them. And we can do that, but not everybody's gonna get rid of them easily.
How
that's all.
how many complaints would you say we've had about chicken flocks? Is that something that's frequent or rare or seven or how many? Do you have any idea how many times we've had complaints from neighbors about chickens?
I can remember having, a couple complaints a year, and I've definitely sent out letters. I think Daryl, since he's been on board, has had one complaint. He had one call about smell, and then the complainant said, you know what, let's not do anything right now. Let me talk to my neighbor and see if I can get it resolved. And apparently they did, and he never came back to formally make a complaint.
Well,
So
I guess
Daryl's had one in 2 years.
I guess that's the point I'm getting at. If it's working satisfactorily now, why are we adding a level of bureaucracy to this thing by coming up with a stringent ordinance that people can't help but balk at? I mean, if it's working now, why don't we just leave it like it is and regard chickens as pets? That's kind of what we've done in the past. If we come in with this level of bureaucracy, all these rules and regulations, and try to imply that people have to be compliant with this ordinance, it seems like we're going to get a lot more complaints and a lot more deviation from what we're trying to do. If it's not a major issue, it seems like we're creating problems for ourselves. I don't have any problems with chickens. I wouldn't care if anybody had chickens as long as they didn't come into my yard. But, that's, they keep them in their regulated space. But I'm just, it just seems like we're making trouble for ourselves. And that's my only objection with it, that has ever been my objection, is that we're just making things more difficult, that's all.
Can I just make a comment real quick? Jim, I totally agree with you as far as having to do something and make more rules, where I think typically we don't want to do that. But we're talking about an age where things used to be run by common sense. You didn't need rules because moral people didn't need to be told not to do stupid things. But the people that do stupid things don't follow the rules to begin with. So at this point, I think that by establishing these ground rules, we're making it an environment where there's something written down, people can follow. The people that I do know of that have chickens and that I've spoken to personally have said that the stipulations are not that far out of reach, that they are willing to do those things, they are willing to take the class. Um, and it will keep people who don't take the I don't want to call it a hobby, but who won't take it seriously from partaking, and then they won't be just throwing chickens into their backyard.
Now, you make a good point, Judy, and I don't disagree with it. And if the majority of council wants to go this way, then we'll make our bed, and I guess we'll lay in it. Or make our coop and roost in it, I guess is the best way to say that. But I've always been one for less regulation, not more regulation, and that's where I'm coming from, that's all. So we don't need to belabor this, I don't think anymore, but I understand both sides.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns regarding backyard chickens?
With regard to the comment from the planning commission about being at least 20 feet from any dwelling, that certainly changes the potential application process, setting up a little bit of a different set of standards than other zoning certificates do. Typically, we look at the subject property, and someone's, responsible for telling us, where their property boundaries are, where their house sits, and so on, if they're building an accessory building or installing a shed or something. By requiring it to be 20 feet from any dwelling, now we're requiring them to get measurements for their neighbors' properties to be able to demonstrate that as well. So it's a little bit of a different dynamic than a typical zoning certificate, makes the process a little bit bigger and certainly a little bit more laborious for the applicant. And we may need to, equip the zoning administrator with some additional tools to be able to measure without going on other people's properties, without, getting permission to verify things. So it's doable, but it adds another
Yeah, I mean, you can do that
layer.
from Google Earth. I mean,
with reasonably,
accuracy.
but
You let me know if you want.
You watched 20.
That was a comment that was made,
Yeah.
was that we wanted 20 feet from any dwelling, not just from the subject dwelling. Because again, in the downtown area, there's an opportunity where that could be a lot closer to somebody's house than 20 feet. Where you've got houses close to the property line in the downtown area. And so that was the concern there.
and with the initial draft, the setback was 20 feet from the property lines. And council provided consensus to reduce it to 10 feet from the property lines. So that would be another way to keep it away, make sure it was away from other dwellings also.
And
would be
that,
to
that
increase
issue,
the-
again, addressed downtown lots, which may only be 30 or 40 feet wide.
Right.
And so if you're 20 feet and 20 feet, you got a
Right.
foot and a half to stick a chicken coop
And
in.
I guess it just kind of comes down to,
And you can't have a chicken. And,
know,
and that may be the
Right,
answer, and
the
I'm
more-
okay with
right,
that.
I mean, the larger you make the setbacks, the fewer lots will be able to have it.
Yeah.
Right, so, as it is right now, I don't think there were any townhome lots. There may be a couple end units that have very large side yards. Actually, I know there are a small handful that have very large side yards that I guess, would, part of that would be considered their backyard, that they probably could comply. But they would certainly be the exception. So the majority of interior, townhome lots wouldn't be able to have chickens because they couldn't meet the 10-foot setback from the side yard because their lots are only typically 18 feet wide.
Just to check, Jim, see, this is what confused me, is whether we had already implemented these. So the minimum setback for a coop or run is already 20 feet from any lot line. So no matter what, you're going to be 20 feet from a neighbor's dwelling, are you not?
That's how it's worded. The
That's how
minimum
I see it.
setback shall be 20 feet from any lot
And
line.
that's why I was wondering if we had already incorporated the planning.
The
'cause it-
copy that I
Oh,
have says 10.
this is, okay.
And we also have a chicken one is required with a run of 10 feet per chicken, and the run has to be attached to a chicken coop. So you can't free range just in a backyard. You'd have to have a run attached to a chicken coop. That's why I was wondering if we had updated it, because it is different.
This is
from-
flipped. This is
Is
flipped,
it? Okay.
yeah.
So which one is?
Okay. It's supposed to be, minimum setback was supposed to be 10 feet. That's what you asked us to reduce it to last time. And the distance from the dwelling was supposed to be 20 feet,
So what's in our packet is incorrect.
is inverted, yes.
Okay. 'Cause that's why I was a little confused earlier, because I thought somehow we had already
Yeah,
done
this,
these changes.
yeah, this is the, 'cause I have the printed copy we used at the
That you
planning
used today.
commission meeting.
And that's why I asked, because I was a little
Yeah.
confused.
I was
Yeah, I got
The
you.
one
I
from the
got you.
planning commission is,
The one from the
10
planning
feet
commission
and 20.
says 10 feet from the lot line and 20 feet from any dwelling on the property.
okay.
Okay.
So that's what
I-
was presented at planning commission.
I probably did not get the right version to Clara. That's my mistake there.
Okay,
We
so
did,
all
we
in
did
all,
update it after last month's council meeting.
okay, so just to like wrap this up, because I don't think we need to spend any more time on this. It sounds like we need to have planning address their concerns
Yes,
before we go any further.
I agree.
So you want to send this back to planning commission you want planning commission to write this then? Is that what I'm
Well,
understanding?
I mean, I'd take what they just said from the last meeting, take it to Jim revise it to what,
Right.
We'll plug in the changes
Revise it and then see what
Okay.
planning
to the
says.
best,
yeah, see what they come
the
back
best
with
that we
after
can
those.
to address the planning commission comments and put it back in the packet for Monday, so you can still consider introducing it Monday.
Okay.
Enough of chicken.
Chickens is done for now. Next up, we have adoption, resolution 2023-16, water allocation for November. Questions, comments, or concerns from council regarding that?
The only question I have is, I know that we have, the planning commission, did we give preliminary approval to Avapco for their expansion? All right. Oh, it was just a presentation. We did not give any approval. So just wondering when that will hit the allocation and then what that does to other things that are in the offings, so.
When they reach preliminary plan approval, they will move up to the, and right now, it's the zero line projects with preliminary plan approval.
Right.
So once EVAPCO gets to that stage, we'll put their, I want to say it's 12 EDUs, I think is what their project is.
I think so.
We'll put that on that, and that'll reduce the available gallons.
All right.
Next up, any further questions, comments, concerns from council? Hearing none, proceeding forward. Resolution 2023-17, check signature authorization. The reason this was brought up was because I was looking at some older documents, and on the check authorization resolution, that the charter says we're supposed to have it for check signatories, right? And on there, we actually didn't have the city treasurer at the time. So the city treasurer has been added to this, and that's the explanation for that.
So we used to have a clerk/treasurer. So the resolution said the clerk, because it used to be one person, and it's been split into two positions since then, and we never updated
So
this.
are these resolutions new? I mean, I thought these were on the books for years.
We,
both
when
of
we,
these.
when we split the clerk and treasurer into two positions, we never followed up with a resolution to switch it from the clerk to the treasurer.
I say.
So we just, a
wording.
housekeeping item, we just never
Fix it up.
went back and did a resolution.
Any questions, comments, or concerns regarding that? Hearing none, proceeding forward. Resolution 2023-18, public records custodian. And this is for us to actually have somebody on the official PIA books, right? Yeah.
Right.
So currently, if you go look up the PIA for Maryland, it lists all the cities and who the contact is and everything like that. We currently don't have anybody listed. So that's to bring us into compliance for that. So questions, comments, or concerns regarding that? Hearing none, proceeding down the list. City manager report.
Okay, I'll keep it quick this month. Capital equipment, some good news. We finally accepted delivery of our 2 police cars from the previous fiscal year. So they are awaiting upfitting with the additional lights and so on that will go in there. But at least now we've got them. So now we just need to wait and see when the state bid dealer will accept orders for the fiscal year '24 cars. So let's see. And our dump truck is on schedule with the upfitter to be finished up, hopefully by the end of the year this year. Let's see. On charter and code, really chickens has been kind of the focus. So don't need to spend any more time on that. Robertsville Road, I don't know if anybody's been out there lately, but the curb and gutter have been poured for the majority of the length of the road. The road grading is underway. They're kind of concentrating on the western end of the road now, kind of from the American Legion down to the entrance to THS Park and Wance Alley. So Still working through some small issues like sidewalk close to the park entrance. There's a utility pole right on the corner that was in conflict with the curb and gutter. So we're still coming across, little issues like that as the contractor's going out and starting to survey things. But curb and gutter should be finished up, and base paving should be happening later this month. So we're still looking to be finished later in November. So, I'm sure we'll still have punch list items after that, but the bulk of the project will be wrapped up. And there's more in in the DPW report this month on it too. Let's see. But, all the underground infrastructure is finished on the project, so now it's just the curb, gutter, and paving. The stormwater line over at Riffles Alley, the design's been completed, and we're awaiting easement plats for the individual properties to get the property owners to sign off. And I just actually followed up with them earlier today and haven't heard back, so hopefully we can get those easements signed and then put the project out to bid, so we'll be ready to roll in the springtime. Last thing, the FY '24 sewer rehabilitation, we did get proposals from 3 different engineering firms, and we'll get into that a little bit later tonight, but we got proposals from CDM Smith, CLSI, and Arrow, who's doing our Memorial Park expansion planning. And there's a recommendation memo farther down in the packet, so we'll get to that under new business. And that's about it for me, unless anybody has questions or...
Questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, proceeding to department reports. Any questions, comments, concerns regarding department reports? Hearing none, proceeding down to legal report. Jay?
Good evening, everyone. I have great news for everybody. If you recall, we entered into a mass tort litigation lawsuit, PFAS, PFAS, polyfluoral alkaline substances. And we did that along with thousands of other municipalities across the country. And you recall, our hope was that we would never have to go to court, right? We never wanted to play Perry Mason with this. We wanted to get on the bus and have the bus take us to the resort and not have to do too much. And that's what's going to happen. So a settlement was reached with the major producers of this. The major producers would be DuPont and 3M. They produced maybe like 80% of this type of material. And what this stuff is, obviously, is the stuff that has gotten into wells across the country. So DuPont and 3M agreed on a settlement, and the total settlement is $12 billion to pay for this. We don't get it all, of course. Wouldn't that be great, right? But a $12 billion settlement is going to come out. And if you can look at it as $12 billion, with 3M paying the most, and if you're doing math, DuPont would pay like 10% of what 3M pays. So if you can kind of figure that. So the way everyone is going to get paid in this settlement, which is what we're interested in, it's a complicated formula. I mean, it's not too complicated, but you got to have all the factors. It's based on the well yield. So that's not what we're permitted. It's what the well can do, how fast, how much it can pump. It's going to be based on the highest PFSA content of a well. And then it's going to be also, there's a factor in there for what did you actually pump the well for? So to give you an example, you could have a well that super high yield, but in the last 10 years you never pumped it. That's going to be low. Or you could have a well that has a pretty medium yield and you pumped it pretty high to the yield, you're going to have a bigger settlement. And then the higher the PFSA in the water, the more ranking, the higher settlement you want. So if you're a public works guy or you're a city person, you want 0. I don't want any in my water. I don't want any of this stuff. If you're the lawyer side, you're like, yeah, I want this as big as possible because I'm going to get more of a recovery for you. So the cities is, if you looked at a chart, a square chart, we would be in the upper left corner, okay? That's where like 0 is, okay? If you did it like in school, we would in the down bottom left corner. We're in that area. Our content of PFSA isn't that much. Our wells aren't that great, meaning volume producing. And while we produce a lot of water for our town, we don't produce it compared to like Baltimore City, something like that, okay? So what we can do after you type all that in there is come up with an estimate. And an estimate would be And again, these are just made-up estimate figures, but we probably are looking at the sum of between $125,000 and $150,000 for every well that has a contamination in it. Then you add 10% on top of that for the DuPont settlement. And then, so that's the major part, right? That's the major part of what we're gonna get. But there's still the other people that are being sued that could reach a settlement later, but they're only the 20%ers left, so we're getting the most amount, which is better than what we were gonna get, which was zero. So we're ahead of the game. So the decision that has to come to you, and it's one that we've already made for you, so the decision you're going to ratify is that we do not want to opt out of this settlement, okay? So if you can imagine it, we're on the bus that's taking us to the lawsuit, and if you don't want to end up at this settlement, you got to get off, because that's where the bus is going. And so, as I said to the litigating team, and we met with the staff about this, this was our intent all along. We never wanted to go to court and prove the case and things like that, which we certainly could do. And so to do our due diligence, I'm sure you're going to want to know, well, what would it take for us to go to court? So aside from the law, the money that you're spending on lawyers and litigators, you probably would get a court date 6 years from now, okay? And then you'd have to prove your case. So right now, all I have to do is prove that I have it in the well and we get something. Then I actually have to prove that it was Kitty or it was one of these people. So the decision is pretty clear. You want to stay in, you don't want to opt out, and that's what we want. But if anybody has a disagreement with that, this is the speak now or forever hold your peace, because the beginning of December is when you have to opt out by, and we've already indicated that we're probably not going to do that.
Question,
Yes.
you said that if we didn't pump a well, maybe we didn't pump a well because of the contamination. How is that figured?
That is figured into it, and that doesn't apply to us. So 13, and there's another number we don't use. It's on our list. We're never going to use them again, so we don't get anything like that. So that's the decision that's got to be made. So before you spend this money, let me give you you stayed on the bus, we got to the settlement, what does that look like? The settlement, we decide whether we're opting out by December. By early spring, we have to have all this information in, which will actually nail down what I've just explained to you. After everyone in the suit gets that information in, they appoint an administrator. So you can imagine these are like 10,000 different claims that are going in. That administrator is going to look at them all, and that's going to start probably next summer. And they have to go through everything, and then once they approve that, maybe it's by the end of next year, so we're at the end of 2024. And so best case, everything goes super perfect, maybe we get the big check by 2025. So don't plan on spending this money anytime soon. What that also means for us is this, though. It's a long time between now and then. So if something else happens, right? This is just based on looking back, not looking forward. So between now and then, if we find any more contamination, we get credit. That's bad to say, but we get credit for that. We'll get recovery for that. If we find contamination in the future, there is a set aside, there's another pot, if you will, that we can have recovery for that. What we can't get is we can't get recovery for anything we don't have. So well 13 was the example. We can't start pumping well 13 after we reach this settlement and then find, hey, because they should have pumped it now. So that's one of the things that kind of the future plays out with that. The other issue in the future is that, let's say that, well, let me back this up. When people hear that this is in the water, they'd be like, is it safe to drink? There's a lot of stuff in your water. Okay, even if it's bottled water. It's safe to drink because it meets the standards. But the standard in this lawsuit is 0. So if it's more than 0, we're going to get something for that. We're going to get recovery. But let's just make this up. Let's say that you could still drink it if it was 10. So even if it's 1 for us, we've lost something. We're going to get recovery for that, but it's still safe to drink. No problem. The issue is, let's say you're at 9 and it goes to 10. Now it's not safe to drink. So we have to do something. We have to expend money to do something. So maybe you're doing like a carbon filter or a reverse osmosis system or some technical thing that Brian will figure out over there. If you spend money on this between now and the settlement, there's another pot, okay? There's a pot where you can say, I spent $100,000 on carbon filters. Now, they may not give you $100,000, maybe they're gonna give you 50, but that's in addition to the found money. I guess there's no other way to say it. So that's super good news for us because our PFSAs are not at the level where we have to do things right now, but we never know whether we will. And we're gonna have an influx of cash when the settlement actually happens. And for our issues, that money does not have to be programmed to treat the PFSAs, okay? That is a bag of money on the table. You can spend it as you want. We did that before when we had the MTBE lawsuit, okay, because we didn't have to treat MTBEs, and I don't know what we used it for, probably TVs or something, I don't know. But the idea is, for us, it is a great windfall because we can use it to backfill a lot of our infrastructure needs. So it'll be used for that, obviously. But there are lots of towns that you'll walk into across the state that aren't that lucky. They're gonna get their money, and they're still gonna spend money to keep their wells online. So maybe don't brag about it too much in front of
Does
them.
this pertain to just municipalities that get their water from the ground?
Any water provider and its surface water sources as well. Surface water sources were more susceptible to this because of the runoff of the AFFF. That's where it came from, the aqueous foam. It's more susceptible to it, but it also dissipates more because if it's in the reservoir and it's in there, it's probably somewhere else by now, so.
Okay.
So that is positive news, and so I guess what I'm looking for is that unless you want to do something different, we're going to make the assumption we're going to continue on this. And the staff has been super to deal with. Kevin, Brian, Jim have gotten everything we needed because it's all a mathematical calculation. There may be another round of tests, and the good news is the tests are free. I mean, really, it's coming off the top of the settlement, but you're not paying for it out of anything. And that's the good news to remember about this whole lawsuit is that you haven't spent one dime. This is all like a class action deal where they get paid if they win, so. Any questions about that? Okay, so that's really, really good news. I wanted to talk a little bit about, just in general, so you know that what we're coming up. Item 10 on your agenda tonight is the approval of the lease for T-Mobile. That has been long and hard to deal with, not like it was long and sweaty negotiations. It was just drawn out because it was so complicated dealing with it. And Dan Dennis did a super job. This is his baby, okay? And he did a super job dealing with this. Because obviously you're not dealing with a person, you're dealing with T-Mobile, and who knows who that person is when you deal with them on the other end. It changes every couple months. So the lease that you have in your package is not the lease that we're gonna sign. Surprise, surprise. Because when it got put into the package and Dan did another once through, they found that lo and behold, they did not include a couple words, but that was the key for us, one of the key things that we wanted in there. And it dealt with the removal of the equipment off the tower. You can find it in there, but what yours says is that we have to give them a certain amount of notice to take it off. And what we wanted was, except in the event of an emergency, we have to give you notice. So that's pretty important to us. So they realized it was kind of like an error, like a typographical error maybe, and they're giving us a new signed copy. And so when this is all said and done and you voted on Monday, the mayor will be given the actual signed copy to sign. So that's pretty good news. That continues on. We have 2 items in a closed session that deal with legal. We have 3 items altogether in the closed session. One is personnel, but the 2 legal items, one is going to be a follow-up on our discussions with the MDE situation and the fine that they have levied against the city that has been going on for some time. We finally have a meeting with MDE set up for the end of this month. We've requested it. It took that long to get it together. And we're going to go down and talk about all the improvements we've made, and there's a whole thing we want to do. But what you're going to be asked in closed session, what we're going to talk about is that they are threatening an enforcement action with a fine, just like the police do. And so we need to know some guidance from you about how do you want to handle that. I'm sure you all read in the newspaper within the last week, the big settlement that Baltimore City had about pollution and things like that. And we're going to talk about that as well because, and that's relevant to where we're going. And then the second thing we're going to talk about is we talked about the merits of it already, the dewatering project with CDM and Conowago and the actual building things. And then we're going to tell you about some of the legal aspects to get this thing to the finish line so you can understand how that fits into it. That's all I have right now.
Questions, comments, concerns for legal?
Great.
Hearing none, moving into new business. Monthly financial report. Questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, proceeding down. Accounts payables. Questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, proceeding down. Dewatering project change order. I know we had already gone through some of this. Jim, did you have anything else you wanted to?
Right. No, it's really down there because Monday night we'll
Yeah.
make a decision under new business.
Questions, comments, concerns regarding that? Hearing none, proceeding down. Engineering services for fiscal year 2024 sewer rehabilitation projects. Jim, anything you want to go over on that?
Sure. There's a memo in your packet along with the CDM Smith proposal. I'm scrolling down to find it here.
All the way at the bottom, I think.
Yeah.
Like page 68.
Thank you. There we go. Okay, so I'm not going to reread the whole memo to you, but basically, we had three proposals, one from CLSI, one from Arrow Consulting, and then one from CDM Smith. The prices ranged tremendously, and we found that the CLSI bid really did not include a lot of important aspects, a lot of services that we need for the project. So obviously they were much lower than the others, but they didn't include everything that we needed, including some key inspection stuff related to the cured in place pipe being done per manufacturer's specifications. Arrow Consulting, submitted a responsive proposal. They included a couple things maybe that were extra beyond what we really needed, but their cost was considerably higher than CDM Smith, who was kind of in the middle of the two. But also the proposal was very responsive, and it demonstrates their, knowledge of what the city needs on these projects, having gone through it with the Fairground Avenue and Meadowbrook Interceptor rehabilitation projects. So the recommendation is to award the proposal for design of the FY24 sewer rehab program to CDM Smith for $147,227. And if there are any questions, Brian's here, I'm here, Kevin's here. So that'll be up for Monday night.
Questions, comments, concerns from council? Hearing none, proceeding down. Comprehensive plan upgrade outsourcing. So, talking with Jim, it would take a while for planning commission to really get through comprehensive plan where it's already 2023. We should have had one for 2020. There's a lot that needs to be done with it. We have a lot of projects going on. We have a lot of new developments that are trying to get in here. The idea is we want to make sure that we have a comprehensive plan that is really looking towards the future. It's really connecting all the dots for the bypass. It's really making sure that everything is lined up. And I think the best way to do that is to try to outsource it. I think what we're going to be looking for Monday is a consensus that council agrees to going out for proposals for the outsourcing. Does anybody have questions, comments, concerns regarding that?
We spoke to a number of people at the Planning Commission conference that was held last month. And there are companies that do this. We've been trying for quite some time now to actually get this happening on our own, and we simply can't make it happen. And then one of the real challenges is that there's an awful lot of just pure paperwork that we don't have the staff or the volunteers to do. So outsourcing this, I think, is a really good idea. We're still going to have public meetings. We're still going to have Planning Commission involvement in it. But the planning commission itself won't have to handle the nuts and bolts of getting all of the pros right.
And just to add, I will say, when we had the Secretary for Transportation down here in Carroll County, and I brought up that, one of the things I was gonna look to do is try to get it outsourced, and we did receive the compliment of, the forward thinking, and again, just kind of aligning for the bypass and everything like that was respected, and that we're thinking of ways to continue the process on it. And again, I think this is a big, getting it done allows us to really look at things a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, and it'll allow the process to move along a lot faster. But it still may take the better part of a year,
Yep, and it's gonna cost money.
and it will cost a little money.
But I will say same thing that mayors that I've talked with, other cities, everybody has recommended getting it outsourced. I mean, a lot of different towns, municipalities are going that way. It's a lot of work to do, especially to do it right, and especially with all the projects we have going on,
And everyone's already so busy. I mean, it's not like we have extra people sitting around City Hall waiting to do this.
so again, what we're gonna try to get, or ask you guys for consensus on Monday. Does anybody have additional comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none, proceeding down. Ratification of purchase, Taneytown Police Department body worn camera hardware.
There's something that had to go out for bid.
This is regarding we submitted it with the grant proposal, right, Jim?
Yes. Oh, shoot, did we not get this in
Yeah, it's
here?
not in my stuff.
Okay.
But we did receive back, 90-something thousand dollars for the grant?
I believe it was 72.
Was it 72? Okay.
Can we move on down to the next item while I search for that
Yeah, that's
and have that in front of me? Thanks.
Nomination to Planning and Zoning Commission, I'm looking to nominate Barry Garner. He has been recommended by Jim Parker over at Planning and Zoning, the chairman, and it has also been recommended by Daryl Hale as somebody who would do good on the commission. He wants to be on it. You've probably seen him attend some of the Planning and Zoning meetings if you've been watching. He does attend them very regularly. And from everything I've heard from Daryl and everything I've heard from Jim is he'd make a good member to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So that would fill the, what is it, the auxiliary seat? or
Alternate
The
seat.
alternate seat, yeah. So he'd fill the alternate seat, and we'll be looking to get him appointed on Monday. So next is the police chief. Everybody, I know you guys have, a lot of you guys received it a while back in regards to Adrian Baker, as far as putting him up for police chief. I am looking to get him appointed today. Actually do the vote for the appointment. Jay, is there any concerns as far as doing the vote in one session? And this is so he can start work on the department. I mean, he's been very proactive and wanted to get started. Again, I've heard nothing but great things about him. Comprehensive background check came back good. His polygraph came back good. All references that I've seen have come back good. I think he'd make an outstanding person for a police chief.
There's no procedural, I mean, you've created this procedural rule where you don't take votes at this meeting.
Yeah.
But, so that's the only procedural rule that you
Yeah,
have.
but we have accepted that, there have been exceptions for appointments at this meeting before.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not a charter rule, it's
And
just your
that's what
procedure.
we've been without a police chief for a while. I just want to let him start getting the ground running. And the other thing was, the appointment happens tonight. He'll be coming here Monday to the council meeting to introduce himself to council and talk with you guys then as well. Any questions, comments, or concerns before I ask for a vote?
I have a couple questions. And I went back looking. The only things that I haven't seen are any information about his address says he's from Chestertown. Does he plan on moving to the area?
Yes, he'll be moving to the Westminster area. So he won't be in Taneytown, but he'll be living with a relative in Westminster.
And
As
that's
far as the actual date for him moving, though, he hasn't given us a for sure date, but he will be moving to Westminster. That is part of what we talked about.
and that will be his permanent address.
Yes, my understanding.
Is there anywhere that it's been talked about the pay? How much we're paying this guy?
So one of the things was he doesn't need the retirement pension or anything like that. He did request higher than what we had advertised, 105, I think it was, Jim, right?
Correct.
So we ended up at 130 is kind of where we agreed with him on, and that actually still is lower than the benefits, the cost of the benefits and the pay.
Well, but except for if he doesn't need the benefits because he's already had positions that he has these benefits anyway. It just seems like, in looking at some of the other papers that I've got in front of me, I'm pretty sure it says the police chief's compensation shall be determined by the council, and I don't remember anybody coming to us and saying, is that okay?
I think that's kind of what we're asking for in the appointment. Again, I haven't.
Well, but I'm
gone
just saying
through
it
all
wasn't
this.
in the paperwork. It's not like somebody said, "Hey, this is what we're talking about pay wise." I
Yeah,
think
that
that's something
should
that
be
we should
part
have
of
a
the process.
conversation about.
It does stipulate in the charter that that the council is supposed to approve his.
Compensation? Yeah, but I
Compensation.
mean, if the compensation is less than what we're paying for anyways.
But it
But,
still,
again-
it should be included in, what I'm saying is it should be included in the vote because we're
Yeah,
supposed
that's
to vote
fine.
on it.
We'll include in the vote for what, 130? But I'm gonna tell you, at 105, there's lieutenants out there that get paid more than our police chief at 105. I'm not sure, if you look over his resume, we're talking about a very impressive resume here.
Well, and that's true, and maybe he's a little overqualified for our city, but I don't want to start setting a precedence where we're now going to, I mean, because we can't in good conscience pay this gentleman this amount of money and then look at our other employees who have been here for quite some time and not consider, you know, their pay as well. It's a precedence we're setting. It's a lot of money. I think that it's a discussion that the council should have. Um, and if I don't know if pay is something that we have to discuss in the closed session, we just happen to be having one this evening. We could do that. And I'm not sure. I understand he's anxious to get started, but I don't see how a couple more days is going to make a difference one way or the other.
Well, I am adhering to the expedited process that council laid out. It was asked that we expedite this process. And yes, wait till Monday, but the idea is we can get him started. You can start reaching out to officers. You can start getting the department moving. I mean,
Well, and I'll leave it in the hands of the other council members. If they don't care about having a conversation about the pay, that's fine. That's
well,
just my concern.
we can have the conversation about the pay now and still do the vote.
So, just to clarify on the pay, the, the pay figure would be 130,223.61. That would be basically near the high end of our level and step chart for the level that the police chief is on. So that was the nearest. It seems like a weird number, but that's the closest thing to 130,000 that fit on the chart, that was in that line for the police chief salary range. So that's why it's kind of why the 223.61 is added in there, just to make it fit the standard for the payroll chart.
What it is within the range of
It's
what we would have
within
expected
the
to pay.
existing chart. It's at the high end. Certainly, it's at the high end of it, but
And he's not
but-
getting anything that isn't out of the range of what
No,
we
I-
have offering here.
no.
But he is an excellent qualified candidate. His resume is excellent.
Right.
And you get what you pay for. I mean, realistically, this is a top-level guy. He has an appointment from the governor. He has served as a police chief. It doesn't.
Yeah, but you're talking about a
again,
pay scale too, that once you set that, if he leaves in 2 years, 3 years, it's kind of hard to go backwards. I'm just saying, we're gonna have a position that we then have to fill.
You have to consider the job that he'll be performing. This is Taneytown. It's not Baltimore City. It's not Aberdeen. It's not Annapolis. It's not Frederick. It's Taneytown. So our pay scale is in line with like-sized municipalities. And Judy brings up a very good point. I mean, the fact that he's going to be at the top of his range obviously has qualifications to be there. He's a very impressive resume. And if it's the recommendation of the mayor to do that, I would be willing to support it. But I'm not sure that you need to bring somebody in and start it at at the top of the pay scale. Maybe there's like you do with an officer that's first starting, a probationary period to see if we're a good fit, for example. I don't know. There's a lot of ways you can look at this, but we probably should have a discussion on the pay. among the council.
Is that something we need to go in
Again,
closed session
it
for?
might-
or are
It
we
might
able
be,
to-
might be fine.
You can, if you want to. It's under the personnel exception. You could do it.
But we don't have to, correct?
You don't have to, but you could do it in closed session.
So, again, I mean, it would be kind of the same thing, right? If you apply for the federal government, they're gonna take in the qualifications that you have. You can start at a higher step on the federal pay scale. Same thing for most cities. It's based on qualification. He is extremely qualified. If it's still on our pay scale, I don't see, I mean, it doesn't get more qualified. Like governor appointment.
Well,
police
again,
chief
then
police.
why did he want to come here then?
He wants to be
slower
closer, he
pace?
wants to be closer to family.
Okay,
has
well, I
family
mean,
in
it
the
just
area.
seems to me that, people at this stage in their career are willing to make some sacrifices for those benefits as well. I just don't want to feel like we're being rushed into something. I, I am very impressed with his qualifications, and I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, but there are more issues that I think that we need to keep in mind than, I mean, God knows as much work as everybody sitting at the front of that room, does. We should all make more money, but we don't because it doesn't it doesn't make sense right now. Qualifications to me are not the point so much as uh, just realistically looking
What,
at what the city should be paying for this position right now.
Okay, so
I'd say when a police department that we've had so many issues, we've lost police chiefs, why wouldn't we want somebody who is the most qualified person to come into that role to really shape things up? I guess, that worries me a bit that we'd rather talk about money than we talk about qualifications. But
This is not the place to talk about money, so we should probably move on.
I agree.
okay, so
I'm not sure,
can we go back into open session after the closed session, Jim?
We did not advertise that we were going to do that. We do have a personnel session noted, so you certainly could do that, but we did specifically say we're not going back. However, if you wanted to, you could go into closed session right now, logistically, because it's within reason, and you could then adjourn back into open session right after it. That could happen. That's
Okay.
an option if you all wanted to. It is not required that you must give notice of a closed session, and that notice must be reasonable under the circumstances. So you can see what has transpired.
We could
here.
schedule another meeting for this week, though.
You could do another, yeah, I mean, it could,
Okay.
there's other ways to accommodate this.
So I don't want to get to Monday and then be that we're kind of stuck arguing again and it's like, hey, let's put it off another month. Again,
no, no,
this
No,
needs to
we don't wanna
happen.
lose- I don't, we do
I
not
don't-
want to lose
Yeah, we
him.
don't want to lose this guy.
no. And I go back to, we are, even with this officer being at the high end of the pay scale in terms of pay, but we're not shelling out for his benefits package. So we are actually saving money.
We are.
Let me
By-
clarify that. Does he need any benefits from the city?
He's not eligible for the retirement program.
That's it.
So we pay 30% or more of the salary into state retirement for the police, for the law enforcement pension. So he has already retired from the state pension program, so he's not eligible for that.
Well,
So that would be
have
over
I.
a $30,000, I'll say, savings by not putting it into the retirement system. So in that regard, it's less out of pocket than we would pay for somebody at 105,000 who participated. I think Judy brings up a good point, though, that, once you do establish that salary level, those of us here today, know that this salary level is set this way because the individual is not getting the retirement benefit. But will people sitting here 5 years, 6 years from now remember that when it comes time to set the pay scale for,
But this-
for our next chief?
This is not a new precedent. We did this for our city manager.
And I feel like it happens in any job. Like, you're paid based on what your qualifications are, how many years you have in. I mean, I don't think that's outlandish.
It's a very real cost to the city to have to pay for benefits, and benefits are very expensive. So if we could, I could justify a higher salary if I knew how much the city was saving by not paying benefits. I think I need to know that before I'm comfortable with offering the top of the pay scale.
Jim, we did that
Do we have
calculation,
a
did we
number
not?
for that benefit package?
I thought we did.
Can we get
That's how we
one?
got to
I
the
don't,
130.
I don't have the specific dollar amount for the retirement program in front of me right now.
But it's
As I
really
said,
just
it
the
is over
retirement
30%.
program you're talking about.
Right, I cannot say 100% that he would not participate in other parts of the benefit program, just that he's ineligible for
But
the
you
retirement.
don't know whether it's going to participate in the medical program, which is very
Right.
costly.
Is the retirement aspect
anything else.
So
30%?
he would have the ability to.
Is the retirement aspect though, is that 30%, that pension
Yeah.
is 30%? So if we're paying at the highest part of the scale, which is $105,000, 30% brings us to 135. Regardless, we are
Well,
saving money.
I would like to.
I mean,
I'd
that's
like that to
pretty-
be verified because that seems very high.
Is 30%, can someone verify that while we're here? I mean,
Benefits have always been in the 35% range,
well, if it's even
We asked the
35%.
major, I mean, would he?
not just retirement.
Major Stem, do you have any knowledge of what I know you guys have a different pension program, right? Yeah. That's what I thought.
All right, thank you.
Does any of our staff currently know, is 30% like an accurate?
I think that
Enough
is
number.
accurate, but I think you're going to have to, use your words correctly. It's retirement benefits, 30%, okay?
Retirement benefits is
Mark,
30%, and that is
right.
what he is not utilizing.
And,
Correct.
and he can waive out of that because he's already retired. But health benefits, if he wants them, he gets them because we can't not
Yeah.
provide them to an employee. And that's not so when we were throwing around, he's waiving benefits, he's waiving his retirement.
But if he is still waiving 30% of retirement, we are still, 30%
still
of
saving.
105,000, we are still saving money.
Right.
He doesn't have any option about waiving retirement.
Because he's already
If
retired.
he's receiving retirement from another department,
Right.
then he can't collect, we can't be in the retirement program if he wanted to.
Yeah, but
Right.
the idea is
So
still
he didn't have any choice in it.
the idea is still the expenditure of the city, which is still less. Let's say we brought somebody on who did have the retirement program, it would still be less, regardless of what we brought them on. Where they were brought on at the 105, which is the max, we'd still be paying Adrian Baker less. That's the whole point, though. Is
Yeah,
that for his qualifications, for what he is bringing to the table, for what we desperately need at the police department, which you guys have told me you wanted somebody qualified. We found somebody qualified. And people want to get paid for what they're qualified to do. And a governor appointment, chief of police at Chestertown, he participates in various state programs, high recommendations from everybody, complete background check that came back outstanding. I mean, we found the candidate for you guys. He's not asking an arm and a leg. He's not asking something outlandish. This is not an outlandish ask. We're making it that way for some reason. We need to get a police
A
chief.
lot of this could have been solved if somebody had been more transparent on the salary weeks ago or when this whole process started. I mean, if we had been able to have this conversation previously, it wouldn't be happening right now. That his worth is not in question. I would venture to say Major Stem is probably worth a heck of a lot more than we paid him, and he was invaluable. So that's
I hope we
again,
didn't pay him
that's
anything.
We didn't pay Major Stem anything.
that's
but,
my point. He
anyways.
just did the job for how long? For free.
Yes, and that was working through collaboration with the sheriffs, which
That's right. He knew what he was getting into. I'm just saying that had we gone into this with not trying to overpay, that's all I'm saying. And I know, oh, we're going to save money. He doesn't need that. He has a retirement. We've established that. He's definitely taking some steps down from his past careers, obviously, for a reason. And I'm just keeping in mind other people I know who have retired, who have been willing to maybe not take what they're worth for the benefit of having a slower paced job they enjoy in an area that doesn't have the
I would
high.
venture to say that 135,000 is probably less
It's less than a lot of
than
other
he was
chiefs make.
making
And it's also a lot
substantially.
more than a lot of people in the town are making. So it's all easy to say, let's pay him what he's worth. That's
But-
great. I would love to be able to do that to everybody.
Well,
I just want to make sure that when we have to say, I don't know, raise taxes because we
Well-
don't have the money to pay
We
everybody
have the money to pay him 130.
right now.
Jim,
But
do we
I'm
have the
saying-
money to pay him right now, 130,000?
I'm saying when
Yes,
we
we
have
have
to
the money
catch
right
up
now.
with all of the other employees that we're essentially saying that you're not as valuable because we don't
Nobody's
pay
saying
you
that.
as
Nope.
much.
Nobody's saying that. This is a,
I still see it as it's a slap in the face to some of our other employees, and it's gonna come back and bite us in the butt. I'm just saying that right now.
a slap in the face to me is sitting here arguing over $130,000 pay to a chief with such an excellent resume, and then thinking about how we spent almost $15,000 at MML. That is a slap in the face to me, and that is because we had to stay at some. And I'm not going to get into it, but the idea is there's other things we spend money on. An excellent chief candidate. I don't even know why we're having this argument, other than we need a police
Probably
chief.
because we weren't informed. Nobody gave us the information.
You're being informed. That's what this discussion is before the vote.
Well, then don't complain about having the discussion.
You don't
Well, you're
don't
not-
inform the council 2 days before a vote. It
Did you
just
guys,
doesn't work that
did any
way.
of you guys ask? Did any of you guys send an email? You've had his resume forever. Did anybody ask? That's
Why
my
should we
question is,
have to?
why should you have to ask about the things that
Yeah,
are going on?
I mean, that's a valid question.
why
Why
wouldn't-
should we have to ask? I mean, I would think that you would want to have had this discussion,
When
or
we
at least
bring
had
it-
this
when we
information
bring it up
out.
for appointment,
Why-
yes, I'm not
why
gonna discuss the
wouldn't we
three.
I mean,
assume
I'm
that
not,
they
and
would
I'm
be
not
in a
arguing
basket?
whether or not he's worth the money. All I'm saying is that this could have been handled.
That's what I'm wondering why is, when we send this stuff out, when you guys get the emails, why do you not ask these questions? Why do you not ask the questions? And here's the other thing, when we do send out the email, why don't you look at the emails? I just had a meeting the last month where apparently you couldn't open the email, but the idea is, if you get the email, open it and read it. And you have had the resume. This
I
is
just said, I
didn't
saw
get
the
an
resume,
email
but I
saying
didn't see
this
the
is
other
This
information.
is his pay.
what he's getting, no, but
And
ask.
everyone has just
Ask.
testified
We
what a great
We
resume that
had
was.
a salary down there. So what were we supposed to ask?
What was the range of the salary?
The salary was 105.
What was the range of the salary? So anyways, I don't get why I'm arguing over 130 for a police chief with these kind of qualifications, other than for somebody to throw a wrench into the city. That is what I see it as at this point.
It's because we're watching out for the citizens' best interest. This is not your money you're spending. This is all of the citizens, and some of them have these questions because I have these questions and I'm a citizen.
And I
This
answered
is not
130.
putting a wrench in
You had
anything.
your question answered, 130. But what you have stated is you don't believe you should get 130.
No, what I stated was we should have had a discussion because it's in the charter that it's up to the council to come up with the price. So
And
I
we're
it just
discussing, I
makes
mean, do you guys, here's my thing, if you guys want to come up with less than 130, say it, and we'll give it to him, but I can't guarantee he's going to take less than 130.
That isn't the point of the discussion. The point of the discussion is that you've presented this, and again, I'm not opposed to voting yes on this, man. I'm just trying to resolve the discussion that's happening right now, which is that the salary is set by the council per charter. And we were not even presented with the figure before we were presented with the nomination to approve it.
So we want to get this done by Wednesday, or Monday, rather.
You know, so
No, I can't,
that's,
I can't
right
wait
now,
for
we
what
are now
the
past
excuse
that
is Monday.
point where we should be arguing.
And this isn't the first time this has happened, Mayor. Every meeting, we have something sprung on us that we're not prepared to deal with. And that's the whole issue that's presenting us, not so much the money, in my opinion, but it's the way that we are treated. And that's the bottom line.
So, just to back up, the way you're treated. So, last month, and in September, when we had originally gone over, let's go back to the holiday hours, for instance, where we had sent you the information. Basically, I come into a meeting and I said, well, we didn't get this information. We never got this information. And then it came out that we did, that you guys did get the information. Just nobody had taken the time to look
I
at
haven't heard anything
it.
about a salary until half,
I
20
know, but
minutes
that's
ago.
the thing is we sent you the resume. If you have questions, ask about it so we
I
can get
made
you
it
the answers
clear
to
that
them.
I had gotten it, but that it would not open at the time. That's what I said. And later on, we'll talk about the fact that we can't really ask questions through email or really have discussions through email.
Can you ask
because
questions
we
through
don't trust
email
that.
regarding agenda items? Staff, can someone answer that? Can a singular council member email me or the city manager to ask a question regarding agenda items?
Yes.
Yeah, you can.
And
No,
that
I
is my
didn't say
problem,
that
is
it
you can
can't
ask the
be done.
questions. It doesn't have to be a whole council back and forth. The problem is you can message me or the city manager if you have a question regarding an agenda item.
No, I can't because those conversations are not kept private any longer. So I refuse to use any email. So unless we're
Okay.
meeting in council chambers so that we can have a discussion,
And here's the thing is, I sent you an invite. I sent you an invite to meet with me, and you never responded back to it.
no,
Yeah, you
not
did.
with
Don't.
you about
Yeah,
this
you
matter.
did.
Can we,
But I'm gonna go back to it. So 130,000 is councilwoman to appoint. I'm just gonna go down for a vote. Adrian Baker, 130,000. Jim, is there anything else we need to bring up?
Okay, I did just, a couple minutes ago receive, well, during the meeting, received an email from Mr. Baker saying that he does not wish to participate in the healthcare insurance. So if that's a factor, that
even
there's some
better.
savings there.
No,
But I
no,
don't
even-
have a, I can't.
I kind of
quantify
wondered
that.
whether he had, as part of his retirement
I
package, already had
can't-
healthcare
I
insurance, and
can't
so,
quantify that this month, though.
but clearly it's more. I mean,
Because we're already less anyways, currently.
all right, so I'm going to bring down to this, I move that we approve the appointment of Adrian Baker.
I'm looking for a second.
I will second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. The nays, wait, no, nobody said nay.
Take that
No,
action.
there were no
no nays.
no's.
Can we take that
So-
action in this meeting?
Jay said we could.
We can.
Yeah, we can.
If you decide you want to do a vote tonight, you can. You're the only ones that are deciding not to vote usually.
And a vote has been motioned. There were no nays, there were 2 yays.
Why don't we save the vote until Monday night?
What was the
That
vote
Monday
count?
night is
The vote count is 2 yays
Two
and
nays
no
and
nays.
no nays.
Okay.
No one has voiced.
Actually, three yays. Right?
You
If you
didn't say
if you don't say
abstain.
yes or nay, that is a
I'm
yes, is it not?
abstaining.
You're abstaining? Okay. So I'll ask again. We have 1 abstain, 2 yays. Any nays?
Sounds like it carries.
Sounds like it carries.
It does.
Adrian Baker has been appointed the police chief.
Now, talk about the salary separately, because your motion did not have the salary.
That's fine.
I thought I did, I thought
Well,
I did
I
do
thought-
that. Did I? I'm sorry.
But when you do it,
I thought I
make sure you
had.
get the right number. I don't believe, I thought you just said I
Yeah, Jim,
appointed,
what is the correct number so we can,
In front of me again.
because we need the change in there too.
Yeah, I think I said 130. I may not have said 130, 322 and
yeah,
change.
I thought you said something.
I thought I had said 130, and if I did not, I am sorry. I meant to include that.
132.63.
1,000.
I wrote down.
223,
130,223.61.
130, 223.61.
Do I need to revise my motion?
No, it could just be me, but I don't think, we talked about it. I think you just moved to appoint him, so it would be.
That's fine.
Let's just do another motion, since that's clearly you appointed his person, and now council is setting the salary. Very clean.
So I move to approve the salary at 130, 322, 223.61.
I'm looking for a second.
I will second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Was that still the same, or did you vote yes?
They
No.
voted,
voted
they
yes this
voted
time.
yes.
So 5-0, or?
And
4 and 1
Councilmember Fuller,
abstention.
yes? Okay, so, yep, 5-0.
5-0.
Is there anything else that we need in regards to that? Okay. Proceeding down, Jim, were you ready with the Taneytown Police Department body worn camera? Or you just want to save that for Monday to go over?
We'll add it to the packet for Monday. I can't get into the end drive tonight to get it. I'm not sure what's going on.
No, all good. Moving down, approval of special event permit application Wolfstock, June 2022, 2024, or June 22nd, 2024. Any comments, questions, or concerns from council?
no, that was a great, that was a fantastic
good
event. I'm 100% behind doing that again.
Very good.
Hearing no additional comments, questions, concerns, moving down the list. So approval of the lease agreement, did you guys want to, which kind of?
So I told you what the story is. They need to revise the lease agreement. The one that you have in your package is what's negotiated. That's what it's going to be. There's one line in there that's not in there. So there's one line not in there, and it will be. And I told you what that was. So it's something you should do.
Any questions, comments, or concerns regarding that? Hearing none, proceeding to public comment pertaining to agenda items.
Excuse me, I have some other issues that I'd like to talk about. The first one is a discrepancy that I've found in our between the charter and one of the ordinances.
Question, why didn't you ask to put this on the agenda or message it to anybody in regards to getting it on the agenda?
That's because I just had surgery and I've been sitting in bed for the last 3 days. So
And you just found this the last 3 days?
I realized that I wanted to bring it forward.
Do you not believe that the public should have the ability to know what is on the agenda and to be able to comment on items that you're about to bring up regarding the charter and code?
Sure, they can, but I can
Well, here's
also
the
bring it
problem
up.
is we didn't advertise
why
what
it's
you're
called
about to
new
talk
business.
about.
That's why it's called new business. I can throw something in there if I prefer to.
Jay, I know they can motion to allow her to go over what she wants to.
So the Open Meetings Act says you have to have an agenda, but it doesn't require you to stay on the agenda. So you can change the agenda. And we don't typically approve the agenda by vote. So what you've done in the past is people just do this. I mean, this is what's happened, I guess. We're a victim of the fact that we violate our own rules is
Well,
the
that's,
problem.
even if we violate our own rules, to get back on it, Robert's rules, in my regard, if I remember correctly, there still has to be a motion for her to proceed on something that isn't on the agenda.
Well, that's where you get into, this is a work session, and you don't usually take votes at work sessions.
It's
You try to
still-
bring stuff up.
It's still a
So
council meeting, though. With the council members present, it becomes a council meeting.
sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. I guess that's the problem, that it's hard for me to do the rules when the rule is we don't take votes, but then we do take votes, so.
Well, we have a quorum here, and this is a council meeting. If council wants to motion for Judy Fuller to be able to go, or Councilmember Fuller to go over items that are not on the agenda pertaining to the charter and code, which would be, in my opinion, against the public being able to comment on items that should be going over. That this does not allow the public to be here for any items that she's about to bring over charter or code.
But that's because we're not voting on it tonight. They can
It's
comment all
still,
the rest of the week.
no, they can't. They can't comment on Monday when
They
you go
can
to,
contact any single person that's sitting up there.
they can. But
That's
this
the
is-
same
this is-
idea.
This is where we give the public comment on our meetings. You guys shot down giving them public comment on Mondays.
I'm not sure when this meeting morphed into something like
I'm not sure.
it
either.
is. A work session has always been a meeting to bring up ideas and suggestions and discuss them before the meeting on Monday, where we hold a vote on anything that may have been brought up or may have been wanted to move forward. Now, it was very unusual for me to experience a vote during a work session. I don't ever recall that in my 38 years on the council. I've never recalled that.
Well, I can tell you what happened in January.
But
Yeah. And I'll tell you what happened the first day I came on to as the mayor. We did something we had never done. We voted to appoint the members of the liaisons. That's something that is not normally done on council. That is something that was initiated by you that is contrary to what we normally
I don't
do.
remember ever taking a vote at a work session other than tonight.
I believe that items relating to the charter and code should be posted on the agenda and the public should be able to come and give comment on it. The workshop is where the public gives comment. You are
It's
asking
also where
to,
we have discussions.
it is also where we have
Where do you
discussions.
bring up items that you want to discuss if it's not at the work session?
You would ask to get it added to the agenda for the work session. So people who are interested in the items that she's going to bring up can come out and participate in the discussion. That is why we have public comment pertaining to agenda items, and that is why we have public comment pertaining to non-agenda items. The fact of adding items to the agenda without giving the public notice to be able to come to these meetings to give their input, we don't give input on Mondays. We tried to initiate that, but we don't.
Discussion.
How do you
may-
even know it needs input? You don't even know what I'm talking about yet.
I mean, you just said you were about to bring up something regarding the code or charter.
Yeah, I noticed a discrepancy. So I would like to bring it up so we can have a discussion.
Why, again, my question would be, why didn't you message it to get it on the agenda?
I shouldn't have to.
You should. That's why we have the agenda, so the public knows what we're talking about. And so they know about things that interest them, so they can come to the public discussion.
Well,
Which
they
you-
can
that
watch
is-
the meeting afterwards.
You
too.
saying that of why you don't think you should have to message in to get it on the agenda is not transparent whatsoever.
It's completely transparent. I'm saying it right now. This is a recorded meeting. They can watch it anytime.
you
But
know,
how are they to give comment on it? How are
They
they to give
can
public
email
comment?
Mr. Mayor, if I
anybody.
might, if I may, okay? This is exactly the same issue we were just arguing about regarding the police chief's salary, where you could have easily provided that information to us ahead of time, but yet you insisted on pushing it through without having done that. Again, this is exactly the same issue where Councilwoman, it is exactly the same
You
issue.
got an email saying we were going to be trying
It
an
is-
appointment tonight. This is not the same.
It is exactly the same, because the discussion was about salary, and you could have easily provided that information to us ahead of time, and you did not. And so we ended up having a protracted discussion about it,
Over an item on
over
the
something that you
agenda.
could have easily prevented by telling us beforehand. We have exactly the same issue here.
No, we
We're
don't.
having
She's trying to go
exactly the
off
same.
agenda.
when a
It is not the same.
agenda is gone through, we go through the new items on the list, and the question the presider asks before he moves on to the next item, which is public comments, is there any other new business? That's a natural question. That's something that is asked at every meeting that I attend. When you get through the new business issues, you ask the question, is there any other new business to come before council? And that gives anyone on the board a chance to say
Well,
something.
again, she literally just said that she didn't message in to get it on the agenda. In my opinion, that is a clear way to not be transparent about what she wants to talk about on the agenda. The item that Councilmember Tillman's bringing
The
up
mayor
is on
sets
the,
the agenda. The
you
mayor
can,
establishes the agenda, and just like the attorney said, we don't vote on the agenda because it's a privilege of the mayor to set the agenda for the meeting. You've done that. But if there's other items on council's mind that need to come before the body, the only way we can get it there is to discuss it when we're gathered.
that's not true. Thinking back on September where we brought up the nuisance ordinance where Councilmember McCarron actually messaged that, hey, I want to bring up the nuisance ordinance onto the agenda. That is the proper way of getting things onto the agenda so that the citizens of the town, the residents of the town, know what we are talking about at the workshops. You actually went through the proper process of getting something put onto the agenda so that people know what we are talking about.
As Jay said, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't.
And it's very logical that conversation conducted at an open meeting, maybe comments from the community, maybe comments among the other council members and the mayor, maybe comments among the staff, will trigger something in our mind that says, well, we need to be clarified on this further. And if there's another new item, I would like it clarified that X, Y, Z be clarified before the next meeting.
But I was just heard that something did not trigger this, that this was something that she intended to talk about.
We don't even know what she's gonna say.
Them.
You won't let her speak?
Jay, what is the rule in regards
So,
to Robert's rules for
It's
council
we go
members
by
to
Robert's
follow?
rules, which if this were let's just say we're in a
code says
meeting
we're
and we're going to
supposed to.
take votes and we're going to go by Robert's rules, then a majority of the council would a motion to make an amendment to the agenda. So you'd need a vote of 3. Somebody making a motion, I amend the agenda, I want to amend the agenda, and second that motion, 3 people. We never do that. And so we're going to set the precedent now that we're going to have to probably think about how we set the agendas going forward. But that's the proper way, because everyone then can decide if a majority wants to talk about something, it happens. And then you don't talk about things where just only a minority wants to. That's how that works. So
And that's why I asked is, again, if you guys want to allow her to talk about something that is not on the agenda, that the public cannot now comment on, because we are closing, I mean, we're getting to the public comment pertaining to agenda items, but what she's about to talking about has not been advertised to the public. If you believe that is transparent, then make the motion and allow her to go off of the agenda.
The matter of transparency would have to do if we were going to vote on it right away without giving the public comment. I'm not sure that it was something that we would even vote on Monday, depending on what she has to say, but let's let her say what she has to say and then decide to go forward from there.
Where do we
I think,
That motion.
Looking
I
for a
second it.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Go ahead.
What a mess.
Do you remember what you wanted to say?
I do, but I'm
Imagine it's
exhausted
been a
now.
long time. She's been thinking about it.
So within the charter, we have different sections for how you appoint a city manager and how you remove a city manager. It's also in there for the police chief, which came up tonight. And then I noticed that for the city attorney, it does not have that follow-up. So I would like to suggest that we add the verbiage to make that the city attorney equal to the removal process and the hiring process for the city manager and the police chief. There's 2 sections where all it would take is just a few word changes that would make it make sense. The first would be under appointment qualifications. Um, for whatever reason, it just says appointment. It doesn't say anything about the removal. If we added that the city attorney may be removed by a vote of the council, just like it says for the city manager and just like it says for the police chief, I think that that makes sense. Now, the reason that it came up for me was because I had a question for our city attorney and was advised that I could not ask him this question, that he was directed not to speak to me on an individual basis. So that being said, under powers and duties, where it says the city attorney shall be the legal advisor of the city and perform such duties in this connection as may be required by the council or the mayor, I'm wondering if we need to change those words to required by any member of council and the mayor, and then finish up with when required by the mayor or city manager, add or member of council, that the city attorney shall furnish written or verbal opinions upon any legal affairs of the city. I think that's more in line with transparency, so that we're then able to come into meetings with information that we need, and these discussions will go a lot smoother.
That's always the way it's worked in the past. I mean, that's been our standard operating procedure for years.
It has, but that verbiage is missing, and I noticed it, and I would suggest that we correct it as soon as possible. And once we have finished this discussion, then I have one other thing, which was the reason that I contacted the city manager to begin with. I mean, the city attorney to begin with.
Sure. To start off with the discussion, so in the charter, there is a part, or actually in the code, it talks about the city attorney. He is an appointed position here in the town, and the charter goes over the mayor's powers over appointed positions and department heads and agencies of the city. So in my opinion, the removal aspect is already there, but it's under the powers of the mayor. What council is asking is it to be put on the powers of the council, But the other thing is, so one of the things I noticed when I was going back through the billing cycles and everything like that is that there is a lot of expenditures made for individual council members receiving legal opinion from the city attorney. Now, here's the problem. In code, it specifies that the city council can get legal opinion from the city attorney. That is the council, the body of council, and there's a reason for that. Because what happens if
I
five
actually
people,
think it's the body of council, not
because
councilman.
it says the city council. So if you look through the charter and code, there are specifications between a council person, the city council, which is the body, and then there is,
I don't hear it that way.
it actually defines, if I remember correctly in definitions, the city council, I'm pretty sure it says somewhere in there, the body, consisting of a mayor and 6 council members, or a mayor and 5 council members. But anyways, it does define what the city council is. And the problem with that is what happens if 5 people are all messaging the city attorney? So let's say every email you send is $75. So think back 2 months ago. We denied a guy $50 relief on his water bill for power washing, right? And this is just to kind of put in perspective. So the council denied him that $50, but here's the thing. You guys sending a simple email to the city attorney actually costs more than the money you could have gave him on his power washing. It costs money when you send emails. When individual council members are getting city attorney opinions, it costs money. And I believe, looking back at past records of money that has been spent, it has been abused to basically feel that the city attorney is a personal attorney for members of council. And that is not the case. He is the city council's attorney. If the body of council wants a legal opinion, they have a whole meeting for it. He gets paid, what, we're gonna be here going over 2 hours now? He's gonna get paid for two hours, so $300 to be at the meeting. That is where you guys get your representation. And not only that, we have a closed session to go into. So you're talking $450 is what he's gonna get paid to be at this meeting. And once he gets that, then the individual council members are now all getting legal opinion from him individually through emails, and that's also costing money. So the bills rack up and rack up and rack up to where we're spending $10,000 a month on attorney fees.
So you'd rather maybe we just, I don't know, go on Google and ask AI
No,
for the answers to our questions?
get legal opinion at the city meetings, as is intended by the charter.
No, I think you're wrong.
How can council be expected to make a vote or a decision on a piece of legislation, a resolution, or an ordinance without having input
From the city
on
attorney,
the legality of that
who is at the meeting, who
resolution
knows what you guys are
or
gonna be seeing at the meeting.
ordinance? And how do we get that legal opinion unless we ask the city attorney? I mean, I don't understand that. That's, well, again, been standard operating procedure for 40 years since I've been sitting on this council.
If you guys do it, there should be a cap on the expenditures of each, and that's what I could see is, yeah, you can message them individually, but there is a cap on the amount of expenditures that can be expended on personal council members getting legal opinion from the city attorney. But the same thing, you do have legal opinion. He sees everything you guys see before it even gets to you, he sees it. He should already have the legal opinion on the matters that you guys are coming to these council meetings to see. And he is there.
Lawyer.
Well, that's the thing is he is there for you to ask questions at these meetings, or else why would we have a city attorney at our meeting? It actually says he has to be present at every council meeting per our
You're missing
code.
the point of these 2 meetings. You know, we're revolving these meetings into 2 council meetings. The fact that we're taking votes at the work session, which is beyond my comprehension, is the whole point of the work session is to talk about this stuff, and then we can ruminate about it for 3 days or 4 days until the council meeting session comes up, and then we can vote yea or nay. We've had a chance to think about it.
So you're
know,
right. You
can't-
basically just said what I said is you
when
have
stuff
time.
When you get stuff sprung on you at the last minute, there's nothing to do but either go up or down. I mean, whether you're
That to
right or
me
wrong.
is not the issue. The issue is to be able to, not every single thing can wait until we come back for a meeting. And there are times when somebody needs to ask a question. And you and I have had this discussion, and I agree, if we are abusing the privilege,
Ask the city manager.
then but the problem is that you're punishing the whole class for one person chewing gum. So I think that should be handled directly. And if there is an issue, then that issue needs to be handled with that council person and the attorney. But to say that the rest of us can't send an email and get a quick answer about something, I think is ridiculous.
It costs money every time you do it.
I understand that.
And here's the thing is,
Then there's a budget for that.
what if
And
your,
if
what if
we,
your
and if
question
we
could have been
are,
answered by the city manager? That's money that could have been saved for the residents of this town. The proper
Why do you
channel.
only care about saving monies for the residents when it's benefits your discussion?
No, there's reasons and rhymes as to why it makes sense. It makes sense to spend money on somebody who's qualified for a police chief. It doesn't make sense to spend $15,000
money
on
on
an
somebody
MML
that's
conference.
qualified as a
It doesn't make sense to spend $10,000 a month on a lawyer for a town of 8,000 people. I mean, like, I don't know.
I have to correct, my
Please.
bills are not $10,000 a month, and it's erroneous. And if you look at the budget year, I mean, because I can't sit here and let you talk about this and just not let it go by, my bills average between $5,000 and $7,000 a year, or a month. And you budget for that, and sometimes they're more. Usually when you all have problems, they're more. But to say it's $10,000 a month and multiply it by 12 would mean you're paying me $120,000 a year. Go back to the budget and see if you've ever done that. Never.
Multiple months, I'm seeing 10,000. You're right. There are times where it's going to be more. But what I am seeing is, for instance, one of the first things I saw in the,
Mary, you don't have
But,
your facts.
but to make it sound like you pay, because that's what the public gets, and then we see it on Facebook. I love being the center of that attention too. But $10,000 a month is $120,000 a year, and that is not the fact.
what do you think
Because
it
the-
averages for the year?
60,000.
60,000 is
Yeah.
the average for the year over probably the past 4 or 5 years.
Yep, I'd say 60, 70, something like that, because there are months where it's $4,000, and there are months when they're $8,000. Here's the interesting thing, and the mayor's on the right point. You all dictate what the bill's gonna be. I don't, okay? I mean, this is a service, and I hate to be the guy that's kind of picked on and it's about me, but you don't think it costs money to have your employees here?
No, I
You
do
don't think
believe
it costs money to deal with that? So I certainly do not feel like I bill you excessively, because I've been your attorney for so many years. Track it. I don't know what they are, but you can track it, and it's pretty straightforward. So I would say that if you said 6,000 a month, 12 months, 48,000, 60,000, yeah, you're in that range, but it's not 120,000. No way.
That's fine. Again, if you guys put a cap on it, yeah, I can see that. Put a cap on the monthly expenditures that an individual council person could have, or actually put a cap on the amount of time that an individual council member can request from the city
I
attorney.
think that
That's
can be,
what certain
That's
towns.
that
that's
can
what
be
certain
done
towns
in
and
a
cities
much
have.
more informal manner than to say that the city attorney is not to accept the questions from council members individually. We're grown-ups here, at least we pretend to be, so let's all treat each other like grown-ups. And if someone is abusing the privilege, handle that individually.
It's a shame we have to legislate everything when we've been able to work together in the past and accomplish what we need to accomplish by working together rather than separately. And that's what we need to get back to. Communication is lacking, and we need to reestablish a two-way flow of communication between the council members, our staff, our attorney, and our mayor. And when we do that, things will run a lot smoother. There'll be a lot less contention, and the city will be better off for it.
So Judy, what you're asking for, just so I can clarify, is a change of wording just for appointment and removal of the attorney so that it matches the manager and the chief,
Yep.
correct? And then you're also asking for a change of wording for the attorney portion. So those are the two things that we would be looking for a vote on Monday.
Exactly.
Okay. I don't think that's I don't think that's unrealistic.
That's very reasonable, but it's a shame we have to do that. I agree with
I think also there is a
Tillman on that.
larger issue that, when it goes back to the discussions from several months ago about updating the charter, is that the city attorney is not covered at all under the charter. That position is not covered at all there. So, and so that begs the question is whether that should be. and whether charter should be revised to include it. But that's a different discussion, but and it's a much deeper discussion, so it's not to be had here, but just putting that out on the radar.
So if we could add
Judy,
that
are
to the
you
agenda
going
for Monday.
to, Judy, will
Yes, ma'am.
you share those changes with everybody so that everybody knows what we're voting on Monday?
Certainly.
Just to check, you guys can't vote on it Monday, but
All right.
Jay, if you want to chime in.
I mean, so whatever changes you make, it's going to be an ordinance, okay?
Okay.
And so
So it can't be voted on
I'll
Monday.
put it together,
Okay,
right? Even though
fine.
I'll put it together. And it can be on Monday's agenda, and you can decide how you want to deal with it. You know, there's provisions in the charter for voting on things the same night. There's a certain vote requirement where you can do that, but you can hash that out on
I
Monday
don't think
night.
it's necessary to have that vote on Monday, but
I'm just saying
I
is
think we
that-
should go, if it is a change by ordinance, then we should go through the regular process.
Proper
I'm just saying
Yes.
that, because a lot of stuff gets said and nobody says that's not right, and then everybody thinks that's right. So it is okay to vote on something the same night. You guys don't do that as a matter of custom. There is a provision in the charter that allows you to do that. Robert's rules has nothing to do with it.
Emergency, is it not?
And anything, what is an emergency? Something four of you decided. The last time you did it was like for a budget amendment, okay, emergency. So just to be clear, and I'm not advocating one way or the other, I'm just saying is that you're going to do it by a written ordinance, right, with an ordinance number.
Yes.
You're going to look at it. It's going to be put on the agenda for Monday, right? That's what I'm
For
hearing.
introduction.
And then you guys decide what you do it from there.
Perfect,
Okay,
perfect.
That's right.
good.
So Councilwoman, if you could share that with everybody, but make sure you share it with the town staff so that they can get it, so we can get an ordinance together
Absolutely.
by Friday.
Okay.
You're closed on Friday, by tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I'll get it tomorrow. I don't do anything else right now. The second part is, and it's been floating around and everybody up there knows that our private emails are being leaked. And I would like an investigation of some sort into the who, what, where, when, and how, because I think that is completely inappropriate and frankly is one more way of putting us in shackles in order to have a conversation.
So
So
just
Jay,
to-
if you can give us any lead there also.
I'm not aware of many incidents. I'm aware of the one that I wrote you a memo about. I believe I sent it to you all back in September, that dealt with a Public Information Act request. I don't know if that's, Councilwoman, if that's what you're talking about. But that was
That's
the
part
one
of
that
it, yeah.
I told you about, where a request came in under Public Information Act, and it was obvious that the requester had specific knowledge of what they're looking for when they named the dates, and the dates are within a day of each other. And so obviously someone told that person that an email exists. And so an email did exist, but that email was between council people, and it was a discussion about policy. And I gave an opinion to the mayor and the city manager at the time that said that email is privileged under the Public Information Act. It's under the discretionary privileges, meaning that it's not mandatory. If you ask for somebody's social security number, that's mandatory. No matter what you want to do, you can't do it. And it's not mandatory that you give it, because some things are, if they ask for a copy of the ordinance, that's mandatory you give no matter what you want to do. It's in the middle, where it depends on the circumstances. And so I gave an opinion that it depends on what it is, and it needed to be decided. And I gave that opinion to the city, and they said they disagreed with it, which is fine. And that email was then given out to the Public Information Act requester. And my basis for the opinion was the fact that there is a thing called executive privilege in law. We've heard about that on the federal level, local levels. And you all have an executive privilege, because under state law, there is a common law theme that says legislators have that same type of common law protection, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to talk to each other, to discuss, not to decide, but to discuss ideas, because if everything you had would be able to be publicly given out under a public information request, it would have a chilling effect, which is what you've seen here, right?
Which is exactly what has happened. And to
So-
follow up something else that, and I don't know how aware of it you are because you were out of town, but following your email to us, information that was in that email came out on Facebook under some pseudonym John Smith.
And so to follow up that point, we'll finish my first point, is that it's discretionary, but my opinion is that we are a corporation, okay? We're a public corporation, but in the end, when you look at our name, we're a municipal corporation, and that's run by a board of directors, which is you all. So that any decision that affects, when the corporation has to make the decision, has to be made by the board, which is you all of you. And so I disagreed with releasing that, and I made that known, and I wanted to make sure that the board, and that's why I wrote you an ethics, because my ethics rules required me to disclose, because I do not want to be in the situation where I'm in the middle and not doing my ethical duties. So that's why you got the September memo, so that you were aware. The proper procedure is that the board would make decisions, not individuals.
Sorry, one question, just to check. For PIA requests, who is the ultimate deciding person on whether that gets released or not?
The board,
The board?
you all,
For a PIA,
for a PIA.
not the custodian of records?
Well, that's interesting, because I just had that discussion with the city manager as well. My understanding was that you decided, directed the city manager to have it released.
No, I actually asked. I didn't direct anything. And that's, I mean, if.
Well, somebody decided to release it. My opinion
And
said
that's
not
what-
to release it.
And
But
this is what I'll tell you, is that it had been brought to my attention that the person who had requested the information was told that they believe that this information, they don't get why it's being declined. why
They
can't
were
be-
given a written opinion, which I drafted and the city sent, saying you are denied because of the reason and what your remedies were. So they were given that. Whatever you were told
Yeah.
is erroneous. We did that. And then, 2 days later, I was informed by the city manager that regardless of the opinion, it was being given, and direction was being given to him. I don't know who directs him other than you to do that. And he directed the custodian to give it out. The interesting thing was, we like to look at the charter and stuff, I pointed it out that day, the custodian doesn't answer to you. The custodian answers to the council.
Interesting.
Going back to my point that it is the whole board that has to make these decisions. To follow up on that, as an example, I'm not aware of the facts with your example you gave, but we've had this one before, so it should be easy. Attorney-client privilege. What I tell you in memorandums is privileged, meaning that even if we get subpoenaed and go to court, they can't get it. It's that protected. No one person has the right to waive that privilege. So even if you have it in your hand and you take it and give it out, you are violating your fiduciary duty by doing that. The only people that can waive that privilege is the board, the corporation itself. Think of you guys as IBM, and you'd have to take a vote to do that. And so that has become a problem on my end, because I have, as I explained in my memo to you, I feel that since information from closed sessions, information from legal memos, information from emails now could possibly be distributed, I feel like I don't want to put these things in writing even to you and advise you, because my advice to you would always be what? These are our strengths and these are our weaknesses. Why would that fall into someone's hand when we're in an adversarial situation? I had a recent situation where the city manager asked, is it okay to distribute a legal memo that I produced back in January? Because that was a different council. And he said, I want to give it to the new council. And I read through it with several subject matters, a lot of it dealing with our pending issues, litigation issues. And I said, I'm not comfortable giving that out because I don't want to read my legal advice on Facebook. I mean, that's a real concern for me. If you direct me to do it, I'll do it. But I also will be noting that I did it under duress because I don't feel it's in the city's best interest. When the issues that we are dealing with are all in-house type of issues. And we have forgotten, and, it is not my place to chide you on these things, but we have one duty and one duty only, and that is to protect the citizens of Taneytown. And so when we give out advice, even though it might be contrary to some of our employees or contrary to things, we are failing in that duty. And at that point in time, that's why I felt I needed to write you the memo, which I assume, Councilwoman, that's why we're talking about this, is that I have a license to do this and a legal obligation that transcends my obligation to you. And that's why you got that memo. And I have no qualms with doing that. I feel it was my duty to do that.
Just to check, so is the clerk an employee of the city?
The clerk?
Yeah, I mean, is the clerk an employee of the city?
Yeah.
So can the mayor give a direct order to an employee of the city?
The clerk works for the council.
I'm just wondering, are they an employee of the city?
See, we come back to that argument, Mayor, where you feel you're the chief executive officer of the city, and therefore you can direct every employee and do all that. But if you read one sentence out of the code, I can read anyone to make it the way I want it to
That's
be.
fine. I'm just wondering, who may give direct orders to employees of the city?
The city manager.
Who else?
The mayor may direct department heads. Okay?
Yeah.
However,
It's very clearly written
so the
down.
question that I have for you then, let me ask you a question. If there is a piece of the charter that says the clerk is the custodian of the record, and there is another piece of the charter that says the clerk keeps the minutes and reports to the council, who directs the clerk then? Just you? Or the council?
The council and the mayor, if there's something in there that says the
Okay.
mayor can give direct orders to employees.
So in the situation where this email was given out under a public information request, somebody told you to do it.
The point, and I think this is the point that you are
I
missing,
can
is
put out
you do
my- I can
not.
put out my memo to Jim.
Mayor, may I please finish my statement?
Go ahead, Tillman.
All right? Your power as mayor does not override the charter. The charter says, exactly, and I shall quote, "The clerk shall serve as clerk to the council, period." There is no other information there,
Okay.
okay? Your position as mayor does not override what is written on this document.
Okay. But if in the charter, it says that the mayor may give direct orders to employees of the city, could the mayor not give an order to the city clerk? And again,
Did you do that?
I don't know, I don't think so. Here, I'll give you the memo that I sent Jim, and I'll put it out as well so everybody can see it. But I will say, I have some deep hesitancies over some of the stuff that's happened here. And I actually sent you an email regarding it.
Right.
And you basically said, don't worry about it, it's nothing.
Exactly.
And then something came of it. But here's the other problem is that, for instance, let's say the PIA says, whoever makes the determination of whether this is in the best interest of the public or not, or whether this is contrary to the public's interest, which is what is needed for the discretionary clause.
That's not 100% accurate, but that's okay.
Okay. Well, so let's say that happens, right? And let's say the clerk is like, well, I think this should be released. I mean,
The clerk doesn't have that kind of discretion.
it doesn't say that as the custodian of records to make that
I
opinion?
think that I don't know whether we need to go back to basics, but the basics here is you 6, because she's not here, so you 6 are the policymakers and directors of this city, always. The employees do not have their own autonomy to make decisions like this should be released, unless it's like, can I have a copy of the ordinance or the budget? Certainly not if it's a discretionary thing. The employees don't have that kind of discretion.
So you're saying the council should be approving and disapproving PIA requests?
Did I say that?
No, but I mean.
Well, I know I didn't
if the-
say
if
that,
the
but you
clerk-
just said
If the
it.
clerk if the clerk can't do it, and you're saying the board of directors has to
I
do
know
it.
you want a one-size-fits-all and you
Huh.
want to play word games.
I'm
If
not
it
playing
were
word
that
games.
simple, you'd all be lawyers, but you're not. I'm telling you that you have to read all of these things together, that there are easy PIA requests. Write one that says, I want the budget, and no one will see it. He will get it and send it to her and send it out. Write one that says, I want an employee's social security number. You won't see it. He will know he can't do that, and it'll never get sent out, and the other letter gets sent out. Write one that's in the middle, and they come to me next and say, how do we do this? The situation we're calling here is very interesting. It's why you pay me $150 an hour. You did the math there. You can see what your other attorneys around get paid, okay? Because I initially talked to the city manager and said, I think we're going to have to give that email out, right? Because when you deal with me, it's like a game show. You're going to ask me a question and expect me to answer within the time that the Jeopardy song plays, okay? So I said, I think we're probably going to have to do that. But I go back to my office and I do research because that's what you pay me to do. And I actually find all of this stuff I just told you and said, you know what? We're not supposed to. It's a discretionary type of thing. Not mine, not his, not hers, yours. And that was my issue with this, is that that should have been brought to the council's attention, maybe not in a meeting format, but saying, hey, what do you think about this? And have an opportunity to hear from your attorney about it. That wasn't done. There was an order given. So if we work backwards, the PIA was given out, the information was given. That we know, that's what the councilwoman's talking about. Clara gave it out. Somebody told her to do it. I assume it's the city manager. Somebody told the city manager to do it.
Wasn't us.
That's my point. If you all would have said, Jay, we don't care, we're voting to give this out because, then you voted. I'm good. But that's my problem, is that there are situations where this lack of communication is getting into the important stuff, the stuff where we can't actually conduct business. You know,
And that's where we are today.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Where we, and especially, again, this, and going back to your memo that got somehow released out and
To
ended
the
up on.
point that I had to borderline file a police report because I was being threatened. And I know where you live, and I don't even know who, I mean, I do now know who this person was, but it shouldn't have ever been released.
And I mean,
To the point that my family felt unsafe.
the question that I have, and it puts me, since we're talking about the attorney, you know, let me get my gripe session here, is that I take great pride in doing my duty for you, okay? It is not about the money. We all have to eat, so that's part of it. But I take great pride in doing that. And at any time you feel that I'm not meeting your needs, I want to hear about that. But right now, I do not feel I'm meeting your needs. I read about a potential lawsuit, front page of the paper. You all read about that. Not one email, not one discussion about it, right? Typically, you would have known about that way in advance. I read about this potential second lawsuit. I don't want to comment any more about that, but don't you think you'd like to hear about that?
Yeah.
I just gave you all the explanation about the lawsuit about water and stuff. Do you want me to do that in public? Well, how can I do that when people are actually suing us? And what do you want me to tell you? These are the reasons they're not going to win? I can give those to you, but why would I do that? This is not how this operates. And that's where I guess I take exception, where, you know, people feel that you're being transparent. Do you think that the people that are filing lawsuits are going to allow us to sit with their attorney and hear their arguments of why they think they're going to win? There is no transparency when it comes to that. It's strictly, we're protecting the citizens of Taneytown. That's what you have me for. So I know we got off topic, but the
No,
idea
it's
of...
precisely on the topic.
Right. The idea of communication is difficult. It has been helpful to communicate through the city manager because it coordinates things. But it is actually difficult because when I have fielded questions, you know, Councilman McCarron calls and says, what do you think about this? I'm like, hey, I'm happy to talk to you, but you need to talk to the city manager first, okay? Because I can come. And the comment back is, well, how am I supposed to propose legislation, get ideas together if I can't see what's legal? I'm not an attorney. And I was like, I'm sorry, I can't. I mean, I abided by my rule. I made the rule with the manager and the mayor, is that this is how we're going to do it. And if you recall, I sat there that day and said, when the council realizes that we're not going to have that open relationship, you're going to have this discussion.
I guess my question would be, I'm not going to get into it. I mean, if somebody wanted to get an ordinance done, why wouldn't they go to the city manager first to talk with them about how it affects the city, how it works with the city, so then he could relay it to the attorney, but...
Because everybody here has we just talked about how we're very short-staffed, we don't have much of a bench, and everybody has their job to do. And so I'm still kind of confused that if you are going to call the city manager and ask for him to give you a legal opinion, that may or may not be right, okay, because he doesn't do that, just like I don't do his work, then he is not doing what you're paying him to do, something different. And so it's always interesting when everybody says, well, we're going to talk about the money issue now because it's too expensive to get the right advice. Do you go to a doctor and say, I'm going to shop around for the cheapest surgeon? I mean, that's the whole situation, is that I don't think that when you all question things, it is a waste of money. It actually helps you. But, you know, my comment to you to follow up, and then I'll end. When you wrote me in the beginning and they said, the council people are calling you directly and emailing you. And I said, yeah, they've done that for 20 years and it seems to work because I kind of know how to manage them. You know, I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time unless it's blessed by the city. And I've never had any problems before. I guess that's the story.
So,
I think the question was whether it allows in the code for individual council members to do that, to engage in that. But your response was, well, that's how it's always worked, and it's worked out good thus far. But if it's contrary to what we have in the charter and code,
Well,
then it's spending money and
we do a lot of other things
We do.
that make it happen. And I guess the thing is, I mean, it's amusing to sit on the sidelines. What the councilwoman's talking about will fix that.
yes.
Yes.
We have resistance to that. But we know, I mean, at least I'd like to think
what does
that
it
for,
fix for the individual, so the individuals can get it and spend the money to go to these?
I mean, you're focused on the money when you just spent X amount of dollars on this and X amount of dollars on that. Let's focus on what you're getting for the service. That's what I'd like. What service are you getting? My thing to you, to all of you that I've worked with is, did you feel like it worked better when I was an integral part of the team?
Amen.
Yes.
Am I an integral part of the team now? Do you feel like you can call me? I haven't heard from any of you in months.
Well, that's because we've been told not to talk to you.
Not to talk to you.
Okay.
The sad thing, we haven't heard from anybody, one another in months.
Well, and
So
that's,
that-
and
that's the whole problem.
Jim, if I may go forward on that, because the fact that these things have happened and that true proprietary email, you know, privileged emails have been released, that has clearly happened. Going forward, how do we prevent that from happening again? What measures can we take to, I don't know that punish is the right word, but there have to be consequences for somebody having breached privilege.
Yeah, I mean, and they're hard. I mean, they're hard consequences because if we were to do some type of investigation to find this out, okay, we can do that. We can ask the questions. We can find out how this happened and everything, which should be done because the concern that I had when we first had the PIA request, which was obvious somebody had the information, was, did somebody hack our system? Right? I mean, that's not just this email drama. That's like our financials and everything else. Did somebody hack our system? He got right on it. Dan Dennis went through it and he said, no, nobody hacked our system. Phew, that's great. Now we're just back to the drama. So how do you stop that? Honor. You got to
Apparently
have a
that
little
doesn't
bit like,
exist.
we're going to go into closed session and you want straight information. You want straight talk. The idea is that you're going to honor the fact that you're not going to disclose what's talked about there, even if you think it's better that I should. And if you can't do that, then you kind of excuse yourself saying, I'm not going to be party to this. I don't think it should happen. The result is if you find that somebody is disclosing this, then you're going to basically have to file an action on a breach of fiduciary duty. Because you have a duty, as I said before, and maybe that's not clear here, you have a duty to the citizens, to the corporation. You have other duties too. You have duties to your employees. You can't discriminate against them. You can't do that. You have duties. But your primary duty is to the citizens. So if you are giving out privileged information, legal information, it is no different than if you opened the bank account and gave out money. You're not supposed to do that. And that's why I say the consequences aren't easy. That's why everybody just says, well, we're here, we may disagree, but we should always be working towards the same end here. So I guess that's the thing. I always, I was kind of terrified when we have a closed session because you may ask me for a legal opinion, and the first thing I'm going to say is, if I give this to you, should I give you everything, or should I hold back and not tell you?
Well, that's exactly right, because that's what this whole situation has created. We're all afraid to email each other about any issue coming before you. You know, Judy, I'm sure if she wanted to talk to somebody, she would have to do individual emails and maybe, or text or something through a back channel because she's afraid to put it out through email because it'll end up on Facebook. So this has got to stop.
Yeah.
And if we need to stop doing everything else that we're doing to figure this out, then maybe we do. Because we can't move forward not knowing whether or not the things we say in closed session or whether or not the privileged emails and communications that come from your office remain privileged. If we cannot guarantee that, we cannot move forward. So this needs to be investigated and it needs to be cleared up now. Anybody disagree with that statement?
Not at all.
Not at all.
By all means, I agree. We need to look into everything. But again, I believe there's a lot that needs to be looked at. But we can get into that.
No, no, we don't, Chris, because we're not going to equivocate here. You make a career
anything.
out of equivocation. You
career
do
out
it
of
all the
equivocation.
time. You've done it here to this evening about a half a dozen times at least. And every time you go back and you talk about some other issue that's tangential to the issue being discussed, and how much money was spent here, or how much money, what we did there, all that is equivocation and is not dealing with the issue in front of you. And it's what you do, it's what you do all the time.
The items that I'm working on are moving forward. I have moved forward many items that I ran on, and I will continue to. And yes, I have worked with you guys on it. But here's what I'm saying is that you're saying this is somehow holding you up from getting the job done. I don't know how it's holding you up from getting the job done. What are you being held up on? What can't you do? What are you so?
We cannot have deliberative email conversations about anything.
About what?
About anything.
Anything.
And shouldn't we be? Like, we're the city council.
Deliberating an email.
Like, do you think that, like, the county commissioners don't talk to each other? That's insane. That is insane to think that local officials don't talk to each other, but we can't. And we certainly can't talk to him, but people can threaten me and my family. I know where you live. It's insane. This whole thing is insane. It's insane.
Well, it is.
The reason Taneytown doesn't have a king is because it works with a collaborative body. If it had a king, a council wouldn't be necessary. We could rule by decree. And that would be certainly a lot simpler. Some people would agree with it, some people wouldn't agree with it. You please all the people all the time, can't please some of the people all the time. Well, I don't know what Lincoln said that. But anyway, the point is, this is a collaborative body, and I'm including the mayor and the council when I say that. We have got to talk about things that affect our town and our citizens together in order to come to the best decision for the folks in our city and move our town forward. It's a necessary thing to do. We can't function without it. We've got to have open discussion among ourselves, the council members, our employees, our attorney, and our mayor. We've got to have that flow of communication, or it won't work. I've sat on this board for 38 years, and never ever in that 38 years has anyone ever suggested that I shouldn't talk to another council member, or did I have fear about talking to another council member, or to our attorney, or to one of the employees to get their opinion on something that was happening, something that was going to affect them, something that was going to affect the town at large. If we can't do that, we can't function. Simple as that.
We're supposed to move into closed session and,
We're going to wait till
know,
midnight.
And it's already 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
I got all night. Again, I will say, if somebody reaches out to me, city, council, whoever, I pick up the phone. I will talk to you guys about anything. I have talked to you guys about many things. But it's a two-way avenue. I mean, you don't reach out, I don't know what your complaints are. Same thing, city manager, if you don't reach out to the city manager, he doesn't know what your complaints are.
We're not
But-
talking
Whoa,
about
whoa,
reaching
whoa.
out to you.
This,
Okay.
this from the person who told the city manager
Manager?
and the attorney not to tell us things?
What
Really?
What did I tell them not to tell you? What did I tell them, what did I tell you not to tell these guys?
I was told not to communicate with the council. So when these lawsuits came in, I communicated with you, with the council, you, not the council, with the manager and you, and it was never passed on to the council. And was forbidden to contact you all directly. Is that not?
I will say, I do not think you were forbidden. I think we talked about that. I did believe that people were abusing you as an individual attorney.
Well, I'm not doing their like legal work.
And that's, you actually
right?
agreed. You're like, well, yeah, I can see how.
I
you're coming
agreed
up
that
with
we could work it that way. I mean, first of all, I don't do anybody's individual legal work here, right? So I'm not their individual attorney ever.
And right now, you're not even doing our legal work as a
right?
city
Exactly,
employee because I
right.
can't even talk to you.
But the point is
Well,
that
you can, because he's at the council.
when
meeting.
I give, like, my question is this. Why was I put in a position to have to give this opinion on those, their legal opinions on 3 lawsuits or 3 legal issues? Why did I have to send them to the council myself? Why did I have to?
Did you talk with the city manager about getting it sent out to council?
I gave them to the city manager. I gave them to you. Why? Do you understand the position you put me in? As some days I'm okay to do this and some days I'm not? I mean, I'm not doing that. I do your legal work. I do it because that's what you expect of me. But this inner policy of who goodness knows what, I mean, that's where we are right now is so-and-so doesn't know this. I'll give you a further example. I followed up. I forget the exact subject, but it might have been with the PIA stuff. I asked for clarification from the city manager. I said, why did we give this out? You know, due diligence. He said, I was instructed to do so. And the mayor sent me a memo. I said, well, I got to see this memo. I've been instructed not to share that. Okay? I'm your attorney. Everything you do, I should be seeing. The joke that I had when I hung up the phone was, maybe if I file a PIA, you're going to have to give it to me. How can we operate like that? And then you put me in the middle of this saying, how come I don't do things and how come I have to do that? You all should want to know all these things. I could sit down with you for hours and talk to you about these lawsuits.
And frankly, this goes back to issues that were talked about when this council first convened in May. That, and it led to the PIP program for the city manager, who was told, you know, we need to get more information. We need to have the information. I should not find out from reading the Carroll County Times that we're being sued.
Did you read your, I'm pretty sure there were other emails.
No, you
regarding
did
that.
not.
No, there were not.
Not for me, but I thought there were, pretty sure there were other emails regarding that specific lawsuit that was in the Carroll County Times, the issue that we were having. Did you not send out an email regarding the active litigation that we had for the city to everybody? I thought I remember an email like that.
Maybe
I mean,
at one
I'll
point in
check
time-
after this and I'll forward it back out to you guys, but there was actually something that went out regarding what we actively were seeing. And again, Williams, have we actually seen an active tort claim or anything regarding it yet?
I mean, right.
yeah.
That's my point, is that, do you want me to explain this?
Not something that should be talked about in open session. And it's something that could be easily communicated by email if we could trust that the emails would stay privileged. And right now, that obviously isn't happening. And so,
Typically,
again, this is, when you talk about what we're stopped from doing, well, by God, we're stopped from doing it.
see,
City
typically,
attorney mentioned a few minutes, well, more than a few minutes ago now, my request of sharing a memo that he had drafted prior to the election on some issues. I felt like that would help get those who were not on council at the time up to speed on some of those matters. They were mentioned very briefly in the list of items Jay was working on that he provided shortly after the election with just kind of bullet point lists, you know, and they were included in there and, you know, you wouldn't really know what to ask questions about necessarily. But again, you know, that I wanted to make sure that that was okay to circulate to the new council members. But again, you know, the climate that we have right now is, you know, such that there's concern about it being released to the public.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I don't know how we, it gets back to that trust aspect. And, I know I've had conversations with a couple of you about that. And, we need to work on trying to rebuild that. And otherwise, we're going to have meetings like this more often than not, and we're not going to get anything done. I don't know. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I just said, you want to know how other places do it. You can go watch other places. You watch their town meetings and they'll look like this. But the reality is most places that are successful, the elected officials, including the mayor, they don't get involved in the day-to-day stuff. I don't deal with the council people in a lot of my towns, which is the conversation we had. I deal with the manager. I don't even deal with the mayor. I deal with the manager, and the manager runs the staff, and the elected officials make policy, and they show up once a month to make policy, or you get the idea. In this situation, the mayor is the CEO and has decided he is going to be the CEO and run the town like he is the president of the corporation. And the COO is now taking direction from the CEO. That's where we had the conversation of, well, shouldn't the council know what's going on? And then we get the weekly things, which I find super helpful because now I know what's going on and I can add things. But you don't get them from me anymore. You notice that.
Yes.
And we had a quick discussion about that because if I send you a list of all the pending items, I wasn't even worried back then that it would get out in public. My question is, what's that going to encourage? It's going to encourage you to call me and ask about them because that's what it says in all of them. And we don't want that. So I said, I'm not going to send you these things anymore. And so I guess on a personal level, I have now been put in the point of feeling like a tattletale, I guess, just to simplify it, is that there are things going on that I give opinions on that are in my realm under the charter. And that's when I was like, well, I just have a duty to do this, regardless of what you think. I wrote that in the memo. I mean, I know there's repercussions when I do this, but I'm going to be able to say I did my duty and I informed you all. But I shouldn't have to do that. You should know this stuff just like I do. We always have in the past. This isn't the first time we've been sued. There was never any problems before.
And it won't be the last.
We're here forever.
That was a good discussion. Anything else, I guess?
Well, I guess there's still the open question of an investigation into how certainly privileged, attorney-client privileged information, and how what might be considered executive privileged information found its way out to other people. That needs to be investigated because that person, whoever it is, and I don't care who it is, but we need to find out who it was, and that person needs to be run off of this council.
I agree. We need to get down to the bottom of it. Hold a public hearing on it.
Yes, exactly what should be done. Let's get to the bottom of it. Because until that happens, the five of us, and I know you don't feel this way, but then you're in the middle of all of it, so you get all of that information. But the five of us are afraid to say anything to one another, and that man right there is afraid to say anything to us.
I'm going to tell you, I got the information before I became mayor of the town because people leak closed session information. But you're right. We need to look into it all.
Yeah.
We do.
Oh, I absolutely.
Before we go into closed session, I realized this right after finishing my report. I just wanted to make mention of the memo that was right after my report about the purchase for the security cameras out at Bollinger Park.
Yes.
Just to make
We kinda
mention of
sailed
it,
past that
so
one.
that it will get recorded in the minutes, just because procedurally, that's what has to happen when we do a purchase that's over $25,000, and we're doing it because it's not in the best interest of the city to go out to bid on it. So the memo is in your packet that explains why the contractor's already on site. We've made the switch from Potomac Edison to solar, and why it makes sense just to award the work to the contract is already out there. So just wanted to make mention of that so that we can make sure it gets into the minutes, and then we've done our procedural requirements.
So that that can be voted on Monday.
Right, well, it doesn't even need to
it doesn't
be
need to be,
voted on, it just needs to be referenced in the minutes, and you need to be advised of it. So that little procedural item is taken care of, sorry, I didn't, it was right after my report, and we'd already moved on by that point, so, sorry.
Sounds good. So going to public comment pertaining to agenda items, the crowd has dissipated, and
We
anybody
have
out
no-
there got
We have
anything?
no public.
No comment. So now I gotta figure out where I put all this. So I am looking for a motion of adjournment to go into a closed session pursuant to 3-305B7 of the General Provisions Article of the Maryland Annotated Code to obtain legal advice regarding Maryland Department of the,
Make a motion to go into closed session.
Second.
I still have to go over the statement, correct?
He still has to read the statement.
He needs to read that statement into the record.
To obtain legal advice regarding Maryland Department of the Environment Enforcement Actions and Dewater and Projects Credit 3-305B1 II personnel to discuss an employee sick matter for a particular employee on this date, November 8th, 2023 at 10:15 PM at City Hall. Does that suffice, or do I need to go into more?
I think that's fine.
Roger that. We are adjourning for closed session. Let's take like a 10 to.
Do you need a motion to adjourn, or are we not worried about that?
Yeah.
Because
We need a
My
motion,
bad.
second, and vote, yeah.
Motion.
I move that we move into closed session.
Look for a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. We are adjourned.